Hello, you are very welcome to the Overlap Rugby Podcast. I'm Shane, that's Daragh.
Hello.
Two brothers discussing all things rugby through the lens of Leinster and Ireland.
We are.
Yeah, it's number 98, and it's going to be a good one. It's a long old one for you. We have a lot of rugby to discuss. Apologies for it being a little late in coming. I know it's going to be up on Friday, unlike Thursday or sometimes Wednesday, but as you probably know, it's been a tumultuous week in terms of news breaking, fixtures being cancelled, all kinds of things, so we've kind of had to wait for a few of those things to break before we got the show up. But
yeah, we were getting into the meat of sort of all of these games as well, and we have the teams coming out here now on Thursday as well. So from that point of view, it probably just took us a little longer than we needed to prepare. So for that reason, sorry for being a little late with it. I know we'd said Thursday, but we're going to be Friday. But to make up for that, we have a meaty one for you. We're going to get into the teeth of some of these summer tour games. Things are heating up, and there's some really exciting games to get stuck into in this one, as well as obviously the Lions update, which we'll open the show with.
Yes, we're going to start, as you say, with the Lions, all the news therein, all the opening fixtures we're going to look back on, as well as the new scheduled fixtures that we have to look forward to as well. We'll take a look ahead to all that before we park the Lions, and then we're going to go through a review segment where we look back on last weekend and all of the summer internationals that took place there, a few cracking games there. We'll look back on all of them in detail before going into preview this weekend's game, starting with the Wallabies France. We're going to look back on that great opening test in that series, as well as look ahead to the next one, which comes around very quick. Yeah, and then we'll move on to some of the other games that are this weekend as well, which
yes,
are pretty
indeed,
exciting.
Yeah,
too.
and that'll make up the bulk of the show. That's obviously going to be the main meat of it. But we're also going to touch on matters in Rugby Europe. There's a game on this weekend. Obviously, we didn't get Spain-Russia last weekend, but we're going to look ahead to the Netherlands taking on Portugal, and it'll be great to see the Lobos back in action. We're also going to touch on the under-20 affairs, which are still going on, obviously the Six Nations and the competition in South Africa, and we're going to move on to club footy as well. We'll mention the Major League Rugby in the States, with the Currie Cup, and actually the new Rugby Europe Super Cup announcement, which is pretty exciting too, and we'll break all that down for you later in the show.
Absolutely.
And we'll wrap up then with all the news of the week as we do.
That's right. And again, thank you for tuning in. If it's your first time here and you enjoy this kind of long form rugby discourse that we do, please do smash the subscribe button, the like button as well. It really does help the channel when you do so, and mainly leave a comment as well. We really enjoy the conversation we have, and hearing your thoughts on the rugby as well. It's
been great to have you guys get in touch, and we definitely enjoy more of that, and we try to respond to as many as we can, and definitely if you have any thoughts, feel free to jot them down as well. That'd be great. We're also potentially going to have a bonus show out for you guys early next week. It really does depend on what kind of team we get from South Africa A. Obviously, if we're up for it and we have the time, we'll try our best to do a quick Lions preview of that game, depending on how intriguing it is, because it hasn't been that intriguing so far, the Lions tour, to be honest, although most of the stuff has been newsy. It'll be a newsier update on the Lions than we like. Indeed.
Well, we hedged our bets and didn't go to do the Sharks preview as a separate one midweek, and kind of just as well, because that game wasn't that interesting, and now we get to see it again. Yes. So we will touch on that a little bit later, but I suppose with that we will pivot into the Lions as well, because that's where it all started, and we've had a few games. The tour is well and truly underway. At least we have a couple in the bank, and a couple of clean victories, one against the Lions 56-14, and then most recently against the Sharks 54-7 as well. Similar enough score lines in both. Ellis Park, the first test of the Lions tour was the Ellis Park altitude, and I think the tourists have passed that with flying colours.
Yeah, no question. I mean, listen, it was very messy. Obviously we have the Bulls game, as you can see, postponed there. And there's obviously been lots of talk about the COVID issue. The Lions had a case in the backroom staff. They also had a player who was tested positive, but then that seems to be a false negative. Yeah. And there's been a lot of chagrin and criticism going around, obviously with the Box game cancelled as well against Georgia. Yeah. That things in South Africa aren't great right now, and that's terrible to see. I do think that they've done a good job of having the games themselves. I mean, I think the coaching staff and all the sort of organisers have done a good job making it as COVID safe as possible, and they have managed to get games going. True. And the real heroes from the Lions' point of view as well are the players, because they are not bothered. They're playing hodgepodge teams thrown together, not even wearing the right jerseys,
splits,
and just loving it. I mean, just loving it. They're such quality players. I think Northern Hemisphere rugby has come on a long way in the last few years. I think that the quality, possibly you could argue it started maybe with that Saracens team, But there's like a few different like turning points that from the doldrums of 2015 all the way to now. But it seems to be at a peak at the moment where these players are just as much as Kiwi players just enjoy throwing the ball around and are sticking passes and can play the sort of jouet brand.
As well as the physical, for like bludgeoning power game as well, pretty well rounded. We were saying as we were seeing the team announcements that it might be the most stacked Alliance squad has ever been, and you can consider the omissions like listing 15s and 23 matchday 23s of guys not selected who are that are really good quality as well. So the depth in these nations now is really really something to behold. And by contrast, some of the depth in teams like the Sharks and the Lions when shorn of their Springboks is absolutely no match at all.
I mean the Lions, they you're right. The opposition was negligible, and there is an element of like there's not too much can be learned from these games. There's definitely an element of truth to that. But at the same time, like the Lions, the players are playing out of their skins. They're throwing offloads, they're moving the ball really well. They're winning contacts, going for tries, hunting the ball constantly. Like they were just bullying both of those teams and never taking the foot off the neck from the very first whistle. Josh Adams has been spectacular.
That's true.
What a start from
stop
him.
Scoring. Making himself undeniable by grabbing all the tries that are going. 15, 11, doesn't matter.
Owen Farrell I thought had a brilliant game. Chris Harris against the Lions was great. Hamish Watson likewise. Adam Beard I thought went well after much of the criticism, throwing those lovely passes.
Actually, so did Navidi. I thought the two boys came in there. Both of their first touches were pretty silky and class, and it was just hit the ground running straight in as if they haven't missed a beat. It was very impressive, and there was no issue with the forced 7-1 split that they had to go with on the day with the Sharks due to all the kind of COVID permutations where things just like out of that halfback combinations were completely changed. There was a wholesale changes the day of.
Faz comes straight in a numberless jersey and just lights it up. But I do love that there's definitely an element to touch on your point just about the lack of opposition, that there isn't much we're learning from a test point of view. I mean, I think earlier in the series or before the series started, I was saying like, keep a critical eye on these games and you get an inkling into how the Lions are going to play. It's like that's maybe sort of true, but we don't have much of an inkling of what they're going to do once they're stopped from playing, because they haven't been near enough for even a phase over the course of these first two games of the tour. I mean, there was moments when Finn Russell was getting the ball and he just had time to do anything. He could throw a wide pass, he could throw a short pass, he could step in, he could carry, he could throw a crossfield kick in.
Think about doing all of those things and then do something else.
Exactly. And then contrast that with the Springboks against Georgia on the weekend, where Absent Dadza got the ball and straight away Peter Steff is in his face.
The line speed in that game. That was a proper test match. Actually, from both Georgia and South Africa, there were two sides, certainly for the first half, that went at it hammer and tongs. You couldn't quite say that for some of these opening games. It's understandable. Like we really like the Sharks. It was very disappointing to see the Sharks be as toothless an entity as they were, but they are missing their most Springboks of any nine, is it, I think, of their squad, and that is really the spine of their team. And one of the things we were noting watching kind of Springbok or South African rugby, be it the Curry Cup or the Super Rugby Unlocked thing, is that you'd see kind of some scruffy play and stuff, and then every now and then you'd see one of the Springbok squad make a ridiculous play, and like any game you watched, the Springboks were the ones standing out as just a cut above, and so you remove them from those teams and then suddenly they are just a little bit less than. And then you contrast that with the Lions, who are all like at top players at the top of their form and all vying for places, and it's just a complete disparity in terms of intent as well as quality. I mean, there were some moments, I think of like that last try that Duhan van der Merwe got, wherein or was it Josh Adams? It was one or the other of them, when Elliot Daly did the little basketball pass. And it looked very pretty, but actually just it was late in the game, but the speed at which the Sharks players got off the line there was just nothing to it. The Lions turned it over and the two of them just stood there until way too late. And it looks like Elliot Daly's got the ball off under pressure, but there's just no pressure, and defensive pressure is what the Springboks are all about. True. So there's an element of concern around just whether or not these games are there's a point to these games at all. Adequate preparation for what's coming. Maybe the Bok play is to just play possum and give the Lions nothing to work with ahead of the test matches apart from good instinct, because they haven't had to face a proper defence. I mean, last Lions tour, I mean, I think a lot of the
a lot of the energy of the tour was brought up by those club games. I mean, they were so competitive. The Blues and the Highlanders.
True.
They were just great games.
True.
And
there were some tight ones the last time they were in South Africa as well. I know the Western Province pushed them to within 2 points or something, as did the Cheetahs, who they're not playing this time around. So yeah, like I think they drew with the emerging Springboks, or the Springbok A at that point. It was the 13-all draw in the 09 one. So they were competitive, tight games at that point. So we haven't had that. Obviously, it's the hodgepodge of a kind of preparation. It's a condensed format anyway.
And you'd wonder how much the bubble is just playing on these these domestic teams in South Africa, and even just the extent to which constantly playing each other and allowing themselves to sort of collectively form bad habits where they're just in these rhythms where, like, oh, you've got to turn over but there's space in the backfield, so you'll kick deep or you'll kick for touch, and we know all of our teams do this, and it's just agreed upon. And so when a team rocks up who you haven't played and does something unexpected, you're all of a sudden stuck in the mud and you don't know how to deal with it. I think there's an element to that. It's not the best advert for parochial rugby. This
no, it's not. And to be fair, like it's not unique to South Africa, although the magnifying glass is on them currently because there's a Lions team touring there. But like, I think a lot of the parochial rugby, with a few notable exceptions, Aotearoa being one of them.
Of course.
But like, even looking at some of the Pro 14 when it was all domestic, like it was forced through COVID to be interpros every other week, and you can see the bad habits of one nation, like be it the 1872 Cup over and over and over again in Murrayfield, or our own frailties of Leinster, Munster, and just narrow, slow, bludgeoning, no speed, no counter-attack, and then suddenly you face someone that culminates in performances like that Bulls showing against Benetton, where like they were just not used to a KBA approach from Benetton. Benetton didn't kick to the touchline at all. They kept it all in play and just outpaced them. And that there's an element of that. That is the fear, certainly from a South African point of view, is like maybe we've been developing and reinforcing bad habits and we're not up to the speed of something, because like all these players have come fresh from a Champions Cup or like in some cases a top couture, but definitely a Premiership and like competitive seasons of kind of, even though it's club rugby, international rugby, where
Six Nations footy as well,
exposure to Six Nations as well, exposure to Champions Cup stuff where you're playing French teams, you're playing English teams or whatever.
When you consider how slow all these nations were to get the uptick back in the Autumn Nations Cup time as well. There are definitely, if I was a Springbok fan, I'd be a little nervous right now. I don't think you'd have expected your club sides to be as impotent as they have been.
The silver lining is just how good they looked against Georgia.
That's true. I know
they're proper lads.
That is true, and we'll touch on that game as well. We've a bit of Lions news to get to well. Just obviously there was all of this issues around COVID, which we touched on. They had the positive case. The positive case in the player has now been declared a false positive. I mean, the lad has tested negative, so all the players who are isolating don't have to isolate. I think the overwhelming majority of the squad are vaccinated, so from that point of view it looks like the tour could be back on track. Obviously there's major issues around COVID, and the Springboks have had their own issues around COVID. Their game was cancelled, and you know there's a wave exploding across South Africa,
and there was talk that Georgia might play the Lions, and then Georgia had COVID.
It's just going around. It's almost in the air at the moment. It's the variant that's going around seems to be just going everywhere, but it's terrible to see conversations around immunology and viruses instead of rugby from our point of view, but obviously sometimes it's hard to keep the world out. But touch wood, obviously I think a lot depends on the Springbok squad staying healthy, but with the level of vaccination among the Lions squad, you could be hopeful that the tour itself will go ahead. And I'm certainly not going to jump on board the bandwagon of people just bitching about it or cancel it or this is wrong. I mean, hindsight is farce.
All of these words, sensationalist rubbish.
Well, there's an element of that to it, but I definitely think like in hindsight they probably should have gone with ahead with the tour in the UK, just brought all the teams home, vaccinated them out of a gesture of goodwill. The British government, that would have been amazing. Or
you could have, even if you were planning on doing the tour this way, you could have an event where you had Georgia and all the Georgian teams over to Twickenham, shake hands with people, get vaccinated, go back over to South Africa.
Or something.
Not that far-fetched, but it's hindsight now.
But it's all hindsight now. I think now that they're there is a way to do the tour. I don't think that there's an appetite in the South African public to cancel the tour. It's not like the Lions are spreading the virus.
No.
But at the same time, obviously, it's casting a shadow over proceedings. There's no way we get fans now, and it's just going to... Hopefully we roll on the test tour. But we do... in the absence of the Bulls game, we do have another game against the Sharks coming up, which we'll touch on in a moment. Just there's a bit of news update from the Springboks as well.
Yes, there is actually. It's more sad news, but nothing to do with COVID, which is a welcome change apart from the fact that it's to do with Snyman. We've touched on this story, obviously, for those who don't know. Snyman, Dealindi and a couple of other Munster heads all received burns, or all ended up with second and third degree burns after. I
don't think anyone was third degree, were they?
I don't know.
No, I don't think so.
First degree is most severe. Third, like they're
sorry.
So not that minor burns anyway.
Okay.
In any instance. But the worst of them was Snyman, who was apparently the instigator. Apparently, what happened was he chucked petrol on a fire that was going, a little kind of bonfire, and then the people around him in Dealindi, one of them, were splattered, possibly as trying to stop him from doing something horrendously stupid, but failing ultimately. Yes, he is now undergoing skin graft surgery, so it is very unlikely that he will be available. Not just the recovery from the skin graft surgery, which will take time, obviously, and time is not on his side in this one, but also with the injury he sustained at the start of last season. He hasn't played any rugby. He is in the squad, but he must be kind of far from the plans at this point with all this. But that being said, there were other knocks as well. The Georgia game did go well for them, but Eben Etzebeth went off with a minor rib injury at half time that they are confident will recover in time for the tests, but he's probably wrapped in cotton wool till then. And that goes with Daragh, who, amongst other things, had a recent kind of tibia, ankle and meniscus tear, a really nasty leg injury as well. Goodness. So they are running short of locks, and that's why Gatland was making mention of the fact that Peter Steph du Toit lining up with 4 or 5 on his back is an eventuality the Lions are aware of may actually happen.
I mean, you could definitely see the logic to it. It just feels like the way that the Boks played against Georgia, they need him out in the wide channels. They need him leading the defence on the edge, and they need him out in the wide channels in offence. He's just too important in that link role from I guess the blindside flank in South African parlance. Yeah. But I just think they kind of need him roaming, and I wouldn't if I was in charge of the Boks, not that I would ever be qualified for such a role, I'd give consideration to Marvin Ory starting ahead of moving Peter Steph, because he's just a linchpin on both offence and defence in the position that he's in. So I would not foresee them making that decision, and I don't think it'd work if they did.
There you go. It's certainly a possibility, though. It's just they keep popping up, and like where they do have massive amounts of really good locks just all over the world. Seemingly every club side has a very decent, capable Safa lock like in their engine room. So there are stocks to choose from, but a lot of their first choice charges are suffering from all kinds of setbacks. And
Franco Mostert looked good, though.
Mostert looked very good, which is silver linings here. And then there's guys like Hugo out of the squad who, if he can grab a hat-trick in 10 minutes or 6 minutes as it was, he might get himself in. But I think that was it for Lions news. I don't know if there's anything else. It's all just Bulls match postponed, which we know about as well.
Yeah, we have another game between the Lions and the Sharks to look ahead to.
Yes, the second of the 2-match series between the Lions and the Sharks. None of which will be played in Natal, oddly enough.
Yes, it'll be in Loftus this week. It's a curious one, but the Lions are hopefully going to be able to play this one. Like, again, it's one of these situations where you're not going to learn anything from it. It seems the Sharks were the only team who are going to step up, who are of any level. But the Lions are going to pick, if they can, and a bunch of fresh legs and fresh heads who are all world class seasoned test internationals vying for a position in their the test team. The test team, one of their career highlights. So they're all going 90 for it, and then you have the Sharks, who are this seemingly depleted and also just tired seemingly from all of these domestic games and the constant bubbling and just the psychological factor of having the weight of what's going on in South Africa over their heads, and they got spanked in the midweek.
Short turnaround for a team that's already missing 9 Springboks as well.
It feels like this game's going ahead just to fill a broadcast schedule.
Well, it's
Sky Sports have this slot reserved for a Lions game.
It was thought about. It was going to be Lions v Georgia at one point, and then that didn't become tenable.
That would have been great.
Credit where it's due. The Sharks don't seem to have COVID, which is like that's something
bubbling
well is what I will say for them, because this game is going to go ahead on Saturday, as same schedule as you say, a TV schedule. It's going to be refereed by Wayne Barnes, the man in the middle. I think he's one of the non-neutral refs involved in this, just because of the bubbling nature as well, is why they have him.
They've loads of Safa refs as well. It's all good.
It makes perfect sense. They have 2 Safas on the sideline, Yako and AJ Jacobs, and then Stuart Berry, another Safa in the TMO as well. So a pretty good officiating crew there for this game. I don't know if they'll be too involved other than keeping the play going and restarting the game after tries.
Yeah, it's hard to gauge anything. I would hope that the Sharks might have a rallying moment where they reflect on how poor they were, and because I know and believe they could be better than they were.
Yeah.
It's obviously extremely tough on them, but get a few new guys in there, freshen up the team a little bit, and just defend aggressively. That's the only thing. Just challenge, get off the line and challenge the Lions.
Yeah, Manny Lebock for captain, is it?
Yeah, I know. They need to be a defensive team primarily, and they do have issues on the ball. They should kick the leather off the ball because they can't stick passes. Kick the leather off the ball and defend.
Yeah,
with intensity.
Well, they normally do bring into an intent and a defensive kind of shape and belligerence.
Get out of the line, shut down things, challenge the Lions, ask questions of them. That's all I'd like to see from them, but I don't know if that's too much to ask or not.
We would like to see a tighter game for sure, just for a test, and I would have thought that the Sharks would be the ones to bring that, just purely because they tend to be one of the more prickly, if not the most kind of
the
prickly
ones that do well away from home, all
of
that stuff. But they didn't look up for it on the midweek, and I don't think that's going to change.
The short turnaround with the depleted forces. I doubt it. We don't obviously have the teams just yet, do we, for this one? Because the Lions, it's such a last minute fixture.
The Lions will probably have to wait till the day of the game to name teams with testing and everything, so that's understandable. It's not that important, and as I say, there's not too much to be learned at the moment. Gatland has an instinct. I think next weekend he'll probably try and put some form of team together. Next, if they get a Saturday game, I think he'll try and pick more or less his first test team and put it together then. We might have some answers then on what way he's going and what way he's thinking, but at the moment they're just playing jouet, and they're doing stuff they wouldn't get away with against the Boks. So it's kind of it's all moot at the moment, I'm afraid.
It is moot and muted. It's been kind of a week dominated by off pitch antics as opposed to on
and
field.
If the club side stepped up and really performed, I think you'd have more conversations that were positive. It's just the fact that they haven't, and the games have been, they're going through such rigmarole to play these games, and then you watch them and you're like, wait, why are we doing this? It's 110 to 21 over the
first two games. Well, that could change this time. It could get worse.
It could indeed. There is another game that we might not be back until. The South Africa A are taking on the Lions as well, and this is potentially an interesting game. We might come in with a proper preview for this one if we can get a couple of teams. I'd love to see the Springboks throw a few bolters in there, like the likes of Esterhazy, Tyrone Green, guys who could step up and be in the test team to get a look at them.
This one should be for, a la emerging Boks is what they were called the last time out. But
they should also just throw some of the guys who didn't play for the Boks the last game. Throw Faf in, throw Colby in, just make a game of it. I'd love to see them do that. Just throw some full test guys in.
In what world is Colby on South Africa?
This world where he needs a game before he takes on the Lions.
He just played a Tocador's final.
Well, get him out there anyway.
Of course I would be all for getting Colby out just for the eyeballs. He's worth watching. He's worth the price of admission alone. Granted, there is no price of admission, there's no one there, but he would get people more intrigued in a game than they might otherwise be. Now, if we see a South Africa A team and we feel it might be a one-sided affair similar to the others, we may skip that preview.
Exactly. It depends as well on what kind of time we have early next week as well, but hopefully we can get that to you. If not, there will be another pod anyway next week, so you needn't worry about that.
True. Yeah.
But on that note, I think we'll park the Lions, such as they are.
Indeed.
It'll all hot up on test week.
It'll hot up in a couple of weeks, but in the meantime, thank you for the Sharks, or thank you to the Sharks for just keeping this thing going. That's what I will say.
Truly.
We were going to pivot on our attentions to the summer series, which got underway in spectacular style. There were a few kind of just games that on paper weren't as interesting as they turned into as well. Like, there were a few highlights, a few lowlights. I think probably the best game might have been the Ireland-Japan one, although Tier 2 v Tier 1 had some really good matchups as well. It's like Romania pulling a shock. It wasn't covered near enough, but running Argentina awfully close, and the USA obviously big finish as well. We're going to get into those games, and we're going to start sticking in South Africa, I guess, with South Africa Georgia, which took place on Friday last, and it ran out 40 points to 9 winners were the Springboks in the end. But that wasn't really the story of the game. It was a fantastic game, I thought, for both sides.
I agree, I really enjoyed the opening stanza where Georgia were getting on top, where the Springboks were being ill-disciplined. Tato and Lobson Dadza were moving them about the place. They were managing to stretch the field. They were game on defence. There was lots to love about it, really.
There really was. The physicality of just the hits in the open play, as well as like the few scrum penalties they were milking as well. A couple of genuine wins against one of the best scrummaging units, if not the best scrummaging unit in the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that's a lot to be proud of for Georgia. They took their points when they felt they had them on offer. They couldn't break them down enough to get the try that we were asking of them, which is a shame.
No, but I did agree with them going for threes on this occasion. They were taking a lead. They were building. It was the 10 minutes before half time when they shipped 2 tries that was bad.
Yeah.
And then the last 20 as well, after the killer Springbok front row came on.
Yeah.
Those were the killer moments. But I'd taken the 9-point lead made a lot of sense. They weren't huffing and puffing against a Springbok D that was only going to be game to stop them.
Yeah.
They managed to get points on the board, and it's been a massive sea change for Georgia that they've got Tato in, that they've got Lobson Dadza, they've got quality halfbacks for the first time in a while.
Really went well at 15.
He did.
A couple of turnover steals for the man, for the wee boy, 18 years old and getting stuck into a breakdown against the box. That's awesome. Good. Yeah, he's awesome. one for the now and one for the future for them. That being said, I was very impressed with the Springboks. I thought they took the opening try, the try they took at the very beginning, which rocked Georgia, having had such a great start, but was also something to just kind of get their groove in a little bit and just make them feel they were oozing confidence by the end. They showed their championship pedigree in those 2 tries you mentioned just before half time. It's like, what do we say? The top 2 inches, the champion teams know when to take games away, know what to do, switch into an extra focused mindset just either side of half time. And yeah, the Springboks took that game away from Georgia when they had been brilliant in the first half and just kind of ripped up whatever the script was going to be at half time of great stuff boys, keep it going, we're in this and stuff, and just that was out the window, and you could see Georgia's kind of belief was gone, dented by it, but it was done supremely accurately. Like as you said, at the opening stanza they were a little rusty, they were over exuberant, they had some breakdowns, they were giving away some pens, they were a little sloppy, which was to be expected. They haven't played a competitive game of rugby since the World Cup final, but the way they found their groove with a great try and performances of guys like Afalele Fassi who hadn't been in there before but looked so assured. Vili
really sharp,
great again, just guys you'd have such confidence in. And then the changed centre partnership also went really, really well with more guys to come in. So yeah, there was really good qualities from the box. They ran away comfortable winners in the end. But the other thing is it was a good hit out for them because they will want to shake those cobwebs off, and Georgia brought a game. They were very, very good in the contact. They were physical. The breakdown was a scrap. The scrum was a scrap. It was a good hit out for both sides. The only downside is that they ended up getting COVID from it, because I would have loved to see them run it back.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was definitely intriguing, but from a Springbok point of view, hugely positive. I do agree with you. Afalele Fassi, I'd love to see him get a go maybe in the tests. Shame we won't get to see him at fullback.
He's one you could chuck into South Africa A for the crack,
isn't he? If you're going to go with Pimpy Colby and Vili LaRue, but Vili LaRue, he did look good as you say, but he was dropping an awful lot on the toe again, and I don't think he's guaranteed a place. I think even looking at Tyrone Green for Harlequins, he'd be an interesting guy to look at, along with Fassi, who is just talk about being brilliant on your Springbok debut and athletic and awesome. Yeah. Just they got to the wide channels really well. The defence looked the same as it ever did. It was Jesse Creel and not Am, so it wasn't as Creel played very well, but there wasn't quite that marauding nature from the 13 channel, but there was that marauding nature from Peter Steff at 7, and it was tigerish.
Once they got in, there was a moment at around 20 minutes. He was slow with the rest of them at the beginning of the game, and then he got his hands on the ball in the wide channels at around minute 18 and just rampaged. And from then on, he'd found his home out there, and he just did it over and over again.
Yeah, and the Georgians were a game in the defensive stakes. They were tackling for the most part, but Peter Steff just kept going, and then there was one moment where he got on top of the 2 centres. I think he shrugged off Kavesaladze and then bounced off Sharakadze, and away he still went. And that was it was a killer moment. They just kept wearing on the Georgians, but they were putting width on the ball, they were putting speed on the ball. All good signs, all encouraging. I would shout out Willemse as well off the bench. He's coming for Frans Steen's 12 jersey perhaps. And then just the other moment that was killer was when the Georgians were holding up that scrum and getting after Oxenche, which is a little concern for him as a test option, likewise Trevor Nyakanye. But to bring on the trifecta of Kitshoff, Marks and Malherbe.
Well, that was game over.
It was the best.
It was a shame because it had been a good game, but there it was, game over right there.
It was so
the Georgians by
brutal.
Riposte did bring on their substitute tight head, and as a kind of a ha-ha, but it didn't go well at all. He got hoisted up like a flag.
It was destroyed them, and that is an awesome front row combination. So the main takeaways: the Georgians were great as well. They probably just have they have a couple of issues. I didn't mind their defense. I didn't mind their offense even against a tough Springbok defense that's hard to break down. What I minded were the silly penalties, which came thick and fast in the second half.
By the end, it was just ridiculous. Like, they kept doing it. Like, I understood, like, altitude was a factor. We were hiding it pre-match.
Yeah.
It's going to tell on the Georgians. I know they did do some preparation for it, but it's not the same as experiencing it. No. And then you couple that with the pressure of a Bok team that are on top of you and running in tries on you. And yeah, by the end, like, even young guys like Veseladze was caught offside on one of them. It was just, all of them were contributing. They were late retreating. They were still shooting up, hitting guys off the ball. Charging guys down on kick chase. Like, a bewildering barrage of score padding penalties was what came in what could have been a tighter game than it was, but they gassed, and when they gassed, they go straight to the penalties.
It's a problem.
And it's exactly what the Springboks want. It's what they want against a tier 1 side. If it's a World Cup final tomorrow, they want that way. They apply the pressure, they'll concede the penalties, we'll kick the corners, we'll maul, we'll try. And Georgia were just, very accommodating in getting them into that rhythm, which is exactly what they'll want come test time.
It's a shame. There's like an element of over playmaking in there as well. Like Saganadze, his yellow card that was so costly just before half time. Like, he kept doing that, jumping across the line out, and he's trying to make a play, but they're just missing that top 2 inches at the moment.
And then he came straight back on from that sin bin and gave away the exact same penalty again. All
he wants to do is make a play. I understand that, but they've got to be a little smarter in how they apply themselves, or they'll struggle.
Too physical to get away with it. It's like anything. When you see, like, a little guy might be able to sneak something, but when you're a big guy lying on, like, when you see a big kind of cumbersome tight head or lock go in off their feet or on, like, just, you're never ever going to get away with it. Look at the size of you know, and that applies to pretty much that whole Georgian team, especially when they're a bit tired.
It's one of the few entry points for a tier 2 team to beat a tier 1 team as well, is to win the penalty count. Like, if you can actually, if the tier 1 team are sloppy and giving you entrances, that's one of the ways it happens.
Make no errors and just keep the ball and apply pressure yourselves, and then they get frustrated, pile on more penalties.
Exactly. So when Georgia, you're the team giving away the more penalties, you're always going to struggle to actually get results. But nevertheless, I thought it was a great game.
Yes, so did I, and I'm sure that Razzie will be grateful for it, because it was a proper test match. It was tier 1 v tier 2, and it told on the scoreboard. But as far as the physicality, I'm sure the Boks will be just delighted with the challenge they were presented with, and likewise Georgia, they were probably delighted for the opportunity to play against the world champions, their first game since they were crowned thus. So a good game in good spirits, as I was asking for. A shame, the only shame is that we won't be able to run it back this Friday,
and it is a shame.
And it is a shame. But with that said, we had other games as well. We had our own charges in Dublin, which was probably the game of the weekend in terms of just, if I were to put myself in a neutral eyes view. Certainly with the green eyes on, it was a bit more frustrating than it might have been. It was undoubtedly pretty. It was undeniable that it was a good game, but it was all the same frustrating watching our charges be a little loose and certainly not coping all that well with the pace that we knew Japan were going to bring.
Yeah, I mean, it does go back to some concerns from the Six Nations, where, like, there was a lot of talk about the Ireland offence, some of which spearheaded by us. We have our issues with our offence, but our defence was kind of getting away with it. You know, it was getting away with not being in the chat, despite the fact that, like, we would be controlling possession, controlling territory, and yes, we were
concede over 20 points.
Exactly, we weren't scoring that much, and then we were conceding a baffling amount to a team like France or Wales would just get into our 22 and score. And there was an element of that from Japan. Like, we gave them a few entrances and they just lit it up. I mean, they are fabulous to watch going forward, and Ireland were at 6s and 7s. I certainly think for that try they got for the Lafayette try before half time, Ireland were just at sea, but it was so sharp as well from Japan. They kicked into space, they attacked space. I thought the lad we were criticising last week, Fafita on the left wing, had a much better game and did look quick and did look dynamic and linked up really well. Lafayette was everywhere. Tamora had a very good game. They were beautiful to watch.
What Keith Wood was saying of Tamora, and I was finding it tough to disagree. His place kicking was pretty on the money.
The little drop on the toe.
All the little chips, all the little bag of chips that he was bringing to the party, were excellent. I thought Leach was good. Their forward pack took that maul try dynamically when they got it in the first half as well. So they were up for that fight too. They did fade a little towards the end. That'll be the concern, is that the fitness thing seemed to tell, and they struggled with the power game that Ireland ultimately went to.
Yeah, their defence isn't great either, to be honest, and they left a lot of space on the inside offset pieces, which Ireland did isolate eventually.
Yeah, McCluskey had a bit of a field day in those channels.
Yeah, and Daragh and even Gibson Park at times just taking those little gaps that were being given to him.
Yeah.
All of that was decent from Ireland. When they settled down,
the try itself was a bit of a beauty.
That was a gorgeous try.
Highlight I'll remember is going good highlight reel try from Ireland. Love it.
On transition, sort of anyway. It was off a kick that was regathered, and it was kind of a transitional
a little
play.
kind of scuff, a chip that he shouldn't have got away with, but the bounce let him away with, and then they spread it pretty well. Hugo Keenan on the back of some screens, which you've been calling for, fullback slotting in at the edge of a screen shape. That's good.
It wasn't multi-phase, but it was good transitional play, and I did enjoy it, getting in on first phase. That's a good thing. Lovely to see O'Mahony in the wide channels getting the hands free.
He was great.
The back row stocks are still good, you know.
Yes, they are. O'Mahony as well. Huge credit has to go to him for the leadership role he did in righting the ship at half time, because one of them glaring problems was just the restarts and Ultan Delan's repeated dropping of the restarts. That was just yielding Japanese 7-pointers every time, and it couldn't go on, and so O'Mahony stepped up into that role and did a really, really fine job from there in the end.
No question. And Japan, from their point of view, lots good, but ultimately just the defense and the lack of fitness probably told against them. From Ireland's point of view, there were elements I was happy with. I thought our offense was reasonably clinical, especially in the red zone. They've scored a few different kinds of tries, but importantly got over the line. They were spreading the ball nicely from Gibson Park. Really, his distribution was on point.
Was really, really good. He was really, really good. Because it was
wide passes.
Wide passes. It's so key for the Stockdale try.
And speed of ruck ball. And
I thought Carberry, by contrast, was a little slow. Like, he was struggling with the Japanese pace, not unlike all of them there, but he didn't look quite at the pace of the game. Certainly didn't ever throw the pass, and got held up over the line at one point when he should have thrown the pass. And then the try came a couple of phases later, but it was just, he was feeling like he was struggling to get up to speed with not just test match speed, but like cherry blossom speed, which is what the Japanese do bring.
No question.
More minutes for him. He's obviously out again this week, but Gibson Park, by contrast, was great. Josh van der Fleer, there was one man not shocked by the pace at all. He has some engine on him. Indefatigable was his performance, and he was man of the match again from back row. There were green shoots, as there are with Ireland at the moment. The only really kind of negative thing I could say about the game was it was a shame to see both Larmour and Matsushima leave the field in some discomfort.
That's definitely
that is unfortunate. Those are two very exciting players on either side, and you don't want to see injuries like that. But certainly Matsushima took it in good spirits, saying like, well, I've been playing for quite a while, I guess. I'm just going to have a break. Back in time for Claremont next year.
If it's a cruciate, I didn't actually look up what he's done. It looked cruciate-y. If it's a cruciate, he won't be back in time for Claremont. But sure, listen, hopefully it's all good for him. I was happy enough. As I say, I was just looking up the stats, and it was 62% territory to Ireland, 55% per possession, and they won it by 8 points. They did concede 31 points, and there's lessons there from a defensive point of view. They weren't the first team charges, but at the same time, things to work on. Building nicely on offense without being perfect. I'd love to see them play off 10 a little more. I'd love to see the passing generally improve. But they were better off the base. Gibson Park for me is the one of the front runners for that 9 jersey. If you're looking at a post Murray era or whatever you're looking at, I know he's Lions captain right now, but certainly that's the model I'd like to see us have, is more sharp passing off 9. But I also think you need to have a bit more leadership from 10, and there were moments in that game when Carberry was really, really poor. I thought Ireland built a nice lead at a certain point. I think it was I can't quite remember what the score was, 33-24, something along those lines. They had a comfortable enough lead, and then they just stopped playing, and Carberry was just directionless. He was sitting in the pocket putting these terrible kicks in, and it was kind of a bit of silly kick tennis coming in. But the whole sequence ended with another loose kick from Carberry just being scored, kick return try. The game's back on. And that was really poor from Carberry.
Learned that lesson as well. There's a collective instinct in Ireland that is just dropping it on the toe in ridiculous circumstances, just by way of instinct. Like, one of the things that I hate any team doing is the first phase kick, like I saw the Wallabies do it against France, and it was a good kick, but it still annoys me. Like, you're in the middle of the field, why are you kicking it? Like, don't
test
kick it
the
away.
waters
Test the waters
phases.
first and then kick it. But it just really gets my goat, and Ireland do it all the time, and it really, really annoys me. And Carberry, there was a point you made that like, I love Carberry. I've loved watching him since he came through Leinster Academy. Thought he was a really good dual distributing fullback. I thought he linked well with Johnny Sexton. His best ever game that I remember was him playing against Wasps, where both he and Sexton were on the field together, and it was the 10-15 axis, and he was man of the match from 15, and he didn't put a foot wrong. But ever since he shifted to 10, you can see why they moved him to 10. Part of it's necessity. Like, he's the best rugby player of all the heir apparents at 10 that Ireland do have, apart from the fact that none of them have stepped up and taken the jersey. So I kind of think everyone's willing him to be the heir to Johnny Sexton. But if you look at his resume at 10, it doesn't really scream that. And one of the things you cited is that he's thrown more picks than try assists in a green jersey. And I think that's true, because he added another one to that list against Japan. He threw another interception, and he hasn't thrown...
His footwork and his kicking from hand are a little better than his passing right now, which is just not what I love in a young 10. I want a young 10 to be like Marcus Smith, who can just...
I wouldn't give to have a young 10 like Marcus Smith.
I mean, I envy
Any
England
chance he has an Irish granny?
He's already
capped. Never mind.
No, I mean, I do envy England. Marcus Smith, the man, throws a lovely pass, and that Carberry needs to work on that side of his game. He needs to be brave enough to take it on, and then he needs to stick it. Because the best 10s in the world can throw good passes, and Carberry's great. He's a threat on the line. He's got footwork. He can be a dangerous runner, and then he can find a pass if need be.
And he can
but it's just
out of attack,
opening up a defense with your passing game is something that a really world class 10 needs to have, and I haven't seen it from him yet. And every time he tries it, he seems to throw a pick. So it's concerning.
It is concerning. That is a concern. But beyond that, it was definitely a game for the neutrals to behold. It was
great. It
played
was
at a great
good
tempo.
Spirits.
Good spirits. Also a clash of styles. I have a feeling this could be a little rivalry that goes on for some years to come, because there's such a juxtaposition in style there. And we find, like, they find it very difficult to deal with us when we're latching and we're going one out, one out, one out. They find it almost impossible to repel. And likewise, Ireland find it nearly impossible to repel if they have a little bit of a fractured field and the ball in space. They will cut us open.
It's a great game for us as well. It's good lessons learned. I mean, I think we should play it every year.
To be honest,
keep the coaches honest.
Keep us honest. It's like, we got tonked by Japan this year. We need to work on some things.
Absolutely. It was a fun game, if a little blood boiling from an Irish point of view. Certainly, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah, so did I. Certainly enjoyed the rewatch a bit more. Then there was also this bloodbath. We had All Blacks 102, Tonga 0. Now that's Tonga, I mean, like, the best rugby playing plumbers and electricians that Tonga can offer, coming to face, the mighty All Blacks unleashing Bowden Barrett off the bench and all that kind of carry on. It was a brutal mismatch. 16 unanswered tries. Tried 5 of them from Will Jordan. Will Jordan scores again. He keeps getting on the thing, overshadowing the very, very respectable hat-trick from Brad Weber. Papali'i with a brace of tries as well. Then you had McKenzie, Jacobson, Mo'unga, Ioane, Tui Paladu, Bridge, all of them. Conversions from Mo'unga and Barrett, I think 7 and 4 respectively. Like, some rumblings coming from New Zealand about this being a pointless fixture. I think the counter argument is like 102 points, mate.
That wasn't pointless at all.
Lots of points.
I mean, listen, we flagged pre-match that Tonga had issues gaining access to their players, and it does drive home just that financial imbalance that's going on, and we'll touch on that a little later as well as we look ahead to an important World Cup qualifier that they have this week. And that sucks. And I know there's a broader conversation to be had about the level of inequality there, and just the difficulties of the rugby calendar at the moment in logistically organising anything. Obviously COVID is just a hammer on top of it, but they're assembling players from all over the world who are at all different stages of their season, and for a game like this, as well meaning as it was, they just couldn't put it together, and there's obviously issues as well with guys having to pay for their own quarantine. They don't have that much money in the camp. They probably need a little bit of help in that regard. I hope they get it. But from an All Black point of view, I mean, this probably feels like a mean-spirited thing to say after it. I mean, I thought they were fabulous.
They were.
I thought they were absolutely brilliant. Like, I mean, it was cruel, but it was brilliant at the same time. Just getting into every contact and hunting the ball. They looked so hungry. Because whatever about other people and other teams, I think the All Blacks have been steaming for the last year. Like obviously the Springboks have held on to
they
their number one ranking.
They didn't love getting pumped by England in the semi-final, and they especially didn't love the Springboks then winning the World Cup, and then they especially don't love all the things.
Yeah,
that
they haven't had a
since
chance to play
them.
the Springboks. They obviously had a terrible loss against Argentina.
Yep.
They had a loss against Australia. They had a draw against Australia, and that they weren't themselves last year. They talked about their skill set, but they're frustrated a little bit that they delivered their best stuff in Super Rugby Aotearoa last year,
yes,
and then didn't bring it together at test level. And they have such talent. They have a squad that is more talented perhaps than any. It might be more talent. It might be like more talent than any team is close to.
Yeah.
Even the Springboks potentially.
The Lions.
The talent is just spooky good, and they just looked so hungry. And I kind of hope they continue in this vein just to see what it'll look like come time to play the Springboks, because this is potentially just a brilliant team, and I don't care who you're up against. Like the Lions were up against non-opposition and they did 54-7, which is kind of your stock. But to rack up 100 points,
not many teams in World Rugby, if any, would have scored 102 on that Tonga.
Nobody
team.
else would have.
No, I don't think anyone else. Nobody else would have. They have such an appetite for tries. You tell Will Jordan to slow down and stop scoring tries. He's not going to. It was a beautiful, like some of the sequences. Mackenzie from the very opening whistle was just an absolute dynamo who the Tongans could not rein in at all, and he kept getting his hands on the pill and moving
it was the support play, and then the offloads, and then the ferocity in the contact, and just the stick-to-itiveness of it as well. Like we're just not going to stop. We're going to keep attacking seams, take every try that's there. They had 24 points in 8 minutes. But after kickoff,
no, we've often used on that instinct. It's one of the great qualities. It's not good from a Tonga point of view, or if we've been on the receiving end of some shellackings at the All Black hand as well. But we have in being Leinster supporters, which we are, we sometimes see great Leinster sides absolutely rip apart an under-par French team, and it's great, and they normally will score 30, 40, 50, maybe even 60 points if the team are that dismal. But they'll normally, and throughout history, there'll be the period in that game where it's 45-0, and then the subs come in and there's a lull, and then they let in a cheap try or
maybe two or three,
and it gets
sometimes
to 14 or 21, and then they score a couple more tries. There's none of that from the All Blacks. If they're better than a team, and they were better than this team, they will just keep going. They're like a little AI kind of computer thing that's just going to keep going and keep scoring, and they're not going to stop. There's no mercy. There's no yield. There's no thing. They got over the 100 points in the dying breath of the game. It was over 80 minutes. They desperately wanted it because it was there for them. And it's like, go, another try, easily, let's go.
Yeah, so that part of it,
lot to admire.
There was something to enjoy, despite what people say about it, even from a rugby point of view, just because it's great to see the All Blacks back to being themselves a little bit.
Yeah.
But obviously the broader issues around Tongan rugby remain, and it was a shame. It probably would have made more sense to have them play Samoa, but Samoa had a game instead against the Maori.
Actually, that series, there was a 2-match series between the Maori All Blacks and Manu Samoa, and that wrapped up last weekend. The first test was the week before. It finished 35-10 in favour of the Maori, and the more recent test finished 38-21 in favour of the Maori as well, but an altogether better game in front of some fans at Mount Smart Stadium as well. That was last Saturday. Mike Fraser was reffing it. It was just a much better game. Samoans seemed to be a bit more up to speed with it.
Yeah, it was kind of classic Samoa, really. It kind of hit all the beats. They were physical, they had their offensive moments, they held a nice game for about 33 minutes. It was 7-all. They were in there, they looked even keel, and then the Maori took off. And classic Samoa, they had not one but two penalty try incidents, which both just took the game away from them. And that's just classic Samoa. They hit up all those beats, and they were 38-14 down and got a nice try to end the game anyway, and get a bit of pride back. But I mean, the Maori were pretty consistent. The Maori are great. Rugby in New Zealand looks healthy.
Ash Dixon, captain, fantastic, grabbing scores.
I mean, he should have been banned. But anyway, the Samoans they put together a better show than the Tongans without being anything.
And are probably better prepared for that game that those two are playing each other. We're going to preview that a little later in the show, but that's actually a World Cup qualification one as well. So in terms of preparation, they seem to have a bit more of a squad together. They've had two very good
it's not their full
hit-outs.
team, but it is a good hit out. They are, and they do look more confident. They have some good players to tap into as well. So more positive signs for Samoa. But overall it was a comfortable win for the Maori.
It was, but a good celebration of Islander rugby altogether, and that seems to be what the festival is going. What's going on down in New Zealand as they kickstart their season. But back up in the northern hemisphere, we had Wales, the freshly crowned Six Nations champions, hosting Kennedy, and it finished 68-12 in favour of the hosts. Which I don't know if it was about the spread. I don't think it quite beat the spread actually, but most tier two sides did. But I think the highlight of this game from a Canada point of view was the opening score. I think the opening score was an absolute peach of a try from Lloyd. Straight off a quick tap, and then they spread it, flashed it from one side of the pitch to the other in 3 passes, and the winger scored.
They've occasionally got a decent passing game, and then occasionally it lets them down.
Yeah.
But obviously the physicality, speed, tackling ability, just generally they're a level below. And they're one of the tier 2 sides in a more doldrumy kind of position.
They have been more recently.
Wales were a strong team as well. It was outside of the Lions. There was an experienced team out there, and they put them to the sword and scored some nice tries. They're Grand Slam champions. I mean, absolutely, it was a total mismatch.
Oh, it was a total mismatch, and it was impressive by the end. Wales looked like they set a rhythm going, and they did. Not dissimilar to the All Blacks, this Wales team. Like we were just complimenting them for, once they get into a rhythm, they will just score. They hunt tries. Try.
Pivac took so much stick last year, and he's drilled them into a team that just hunts tries and gets them. And that much is awesome.
That is awesome to watch. The only downside in terms of a bit of tarnishing of this fixture was that Lee Halfpenny, a minute into his 100th cap, went down with what looked like a very nasty injury. It looked like a knee again, and it was kind of not even on the contact. It was just before it as he planted his foot, which is generally not a good sign. So that wasn't good. Just for him, we wish him well in a speedy recovery, because he is an absolute legend of the game, and not how he wanted his 100th cap to go. However, the silver lining from that was that Tompkins came in off the bench and lit it up. He was excellent. He slotted in really, really well and got them moving nicely. That offensive kind of rhythm. He has a lovely attacking instinct, does Tompkins, actually. He's very much a Pivac style player. Little soft on the D, but you'll forgive that if he keeps creating loads of tries. And he's on the bench again for this week, and good impact for them. But
Jonah Holmes also looked good. Interesting to see Ben Thomas getting in and out half, getting a chance as well. Promising young man at 22, and good job done for Wales. Total mismatch. Not much Canada can learn.
Who was that dragon? I'm just going to find him now. He got man of the match. Was one of their rowers who was a debutant.
Ben Carter.
Carter, yes, that's right. He got man of the match on debut and is back in there this week. So congratulations to him. That's exactly how you want to start your Wales career, with a big man of the match showing.
100%. The lads who are back there looking hungry. James Bolton, I thought it was excellent as well. But yes, there was also another game going on, which wasn't a fully capped international, but was definitely notable for the scoreline. Uruguay took the game to Argentina 15 to an Argentina B side, 42 points to 26.
It's not even close, really. That's a bit of a pumping.
I know,
absolute pumping. An impressive statement of intent from Los Teros, isn't it? Because they have, we've been following, but we're going to mention it later on the thing, there are kind of World Cup qualification things going on below where Uruguay are in South America currently, and that comes to an end at the end of this month. I think Uruguay have 2 games that are to do with Rugby World Cup qualifications, excuse me, and they're kind of getting this hit out essentially just to get the rust off and get themselves ready for those. And by the looks of that, they will have more than enough for whatever comes their way out of that repechage, because if you do that to Argentina, albeit Argentina A, that means you're in pretty good stead, which is just good to see from a Uruguay point of view, because they were so impressive in the last World Cup.
They had some of their men back as well. They didn't have Arata, but they did have Kessler back from the World Cup. Berchesi was back in. They had some of their main men, and they moved the ball really well. And Uruguay, South America is humming, but Uruguay are quietly becoming a very, very exciting team. They've obviously you haven't heard much from them since the World Cup where they beat Fiji, but they're coming forth. They're not going anywhere.
No, they play a lovely brand as well. Not dissimilar to Argentina. They move the ball very, very nicely. They know what they're doing. They're organised on D. That was the biggest takeaway from the World Cup. It was these guys are tier 2, but they're organised. Look at their shape. They're moving with the ball. They're staying aligned. They're not doglegging. Very impressive.
South American rugby is just waiting to explode, and Uruguay and Argentina will be spearheading it. But a little lesson for Argentina: don't send your main boys off to Romania when you have a
Uruguay
to deal with.
Well, considering last week in the podcast we were saying like Argentina, the stocks are so good that they're one of the few teams, only the All Blacks and them can send out two sides in two different parts of the world and win comfortably on the same day. But that wasn't the case because they got pumped in this one. And then their main boys over in Romania had the absolute ignominious nature of a scrappy 7-point win that was only a 7-point win because they dug themselves out of the fire with a try on 70 minutes. It had been 17-all before then, and like Romania scored the first score of the second half as well. They were really hot and bothered, and it was a pretty good, like on paper, really good Argentina team. But they couldn't win the collisions. They were losing collisions. Romania were ferocious in the contact, and Argentina were trying to spread the ball, but often they weren't sticking passes and they weren't getting to the outside because Romania were just on top in the contact area, which is what happens when you don't show up. And guys like Kramer, who was so hungry last year after a full camp, just looking a shadow of himself and really struggling on the ball with his handling. And I definitely think from an Argentina point of view as well that the game has evolved since last autumn rather dramatically away from just defence, and as much as Argentina were impressive last autumn, every other side was a little rusty. Australia and the All Blacks were a little rusty. Not to take away from the win, it was great, but they couldn't really move the ball. No, and not since before the World Cup have we seen that silky kind of flowy, wide Argentina that we used to know and love.
Like Uruguay are doing.
Uruguay are doing. Well, like they have the stocks to do, because their back three stocks are still no less impressive than those few years ago. They have loads and loads of really good wingers and fullbacks.
And even
Imov
Maori,
and Cordero, all of these guys are really, really good. Those were the ones on the pitch, but didn't play well that time, didn't unpick too much. Cordero did grab a good try to get them out of trouble towards the end there, and actually he grabbed one I think in the first half. That was it the
scrum he got that late try that was so important? That was a brilliant try. Cabelli got in, but that was a beautiful try. They need more of it. You know, they were so defensive last year. And
they had been not defensive at all, but very flowy, counter-attacky, offensy in years combined. Like it's
Ledesma's come in and really changed the idea. But I think they'll be caught cold by the likes of Wales this week, and potentially by this very, very hungry looking All Black team if they don't evolve and get back to and as you say, try and marry some of that defense that you've built with silky offense and
with
punishing
some of the
offense.
Good players that they have out wide, and like good halfbacks that they still have. Like the tools are still there, and the talent is still emerging. Like they have loads of young guys who are flooding in through SLAR and stuff. They have a draft system such as the amount they're producing. So they are doing good things, but this performance was really, it was more, even though they got the win and avoided the total shame and ignominy of the loss, and they won the Latin Cup, as I discovered they were competing for. But really the story was Romania. Fair play to the Oaks for putting up an absolutely fantastic display in their home stadium.
Defensive brilliance.
They were just tough as nails.
Argentina had 64% possession and 67% territory.
Couldn't break them down. They did break them down for a few tries.
Romania had a chance as well. If Romania just had an at all competent offense, I mean, they kicked their goals nicely again, but Melinta
managed a nice maul try, didn't they, at one point? That was their try.
Yes, exactly. But then they had a chance to score a maul try to level it at the death and gave away a truck and trailer penalty that really let Argentina off the hook, and that was a shame. But they can be immensely proud of how they held up physically, and just again with some of these European teams, you would argue they're just sort of a smaller Georgia in that regard, and Russia the same. Good physicality, good defense. Gotta get the skills and the offense up to speed.
It's true. Catch pass, KBA and all that. The Romanians a little behind on that, but great to see them tough as Oaks. You know, awesome. Like the Oaks, an appropriate name because they were like trees in the defensive line. But beyond that, congratulations for a performance. Fair play to Argentina for escaping without the ignominy of it. But we also had this fantastic game on the 4th of July in Twickenham. A perfect marker for Independence Day was England taking on the USA Eagles. And what a fantastic finish to a game. It ended up 43-29, but the story was just what a great second half from the US. Really and truly, you'd never see the like of it from a tier 2 team. Really, like Romania, obviously we were just saying pushing Argentina all the way is an unusual one as well, but like they scored 3 tries in the second half in Twickenham.
26-3 down at half time, and they were kicking everything and they were slow, and you were thinking, geez, this is going to be 60 points to 3 and this is just terrible. I can't stand this. I don't want them to be this bad. They can't be this bad, and all that's going in your head. And then they weren't. I mean, the best positives that the US can take was just they were so clinical in terms of hunting tries. They had kick for the corners in the second half, and it was no bad thing because they're ruthless from 5 out, and they caught England cold. Their line out maul was great, and then that super try that they scored towards the end of the game, that was just fabulous. I'm trying to remember, Christian Dyer, I think, off the bench got the dot down.
Right, yeah,
but I mean, it was Mikey Teo coming in at fullback, linking up with Cruz on his outside as he has done for the Utah Warriors, and you could see that sort of telepathy working. They got to the extremities and they found the try, and it was a try built by the MLR.
Yeah,
and I just thought that was great to see. Really, really encouraging.
Because you saw none of that in the World Cup.
No,
you saw them being as physical as they were then, physical enough to, they have enough big boys, and they were 6-2 splitting, and they can go to Twickenham and be tough with England, but they can't bully them up front. They'll need to move it, and that seems to be a good advance. Mikey Teo, who will be at 15 this week, he's an exciting player and a very physical carrier as well as a good passer, but they had some good dynamism. I can't remember the name of the guy who started at fullback, actually got taken out of the game by
Marcel Bracchi.
He's
plays for the Force.
That's right, but he had a fantastic game before having to be removed from it, and then Teo stepped in and looked really, really good as well. So there's definitely good shoots of optimism from them. Carty as well at 10, fresh from the Giltinis season.
I thought Cam Dolan from 8 was brilliant. He was the leader on the pitch. He was fabulous.
At the line out, he's very, very crucial to them, and he is just a great leader. He just keeps going. The one downside, Ruben de Haas at scrum half, I didn't enjoy. I actually preferred the lad who came off the bench, the kind of long-haired dude. Can't remember his name. Basca, a bit taller, a bit rangier, certainly a quicker pass. The speed of pass was killing them sometimes.
They were kicking the ball a lot from de Haas as well, and it was just too slow. It was too rudimentary. They were giving England too many opportunities by just kicking the ball in the air. And I knew, even just from watching the MLR, that the guys outside could play if they were ever given decent service. But de Haas, you'd consider.
There are other scrummies in the MLR that
you'd consider other options. Not to be too he can obviously improve, but he was definitely the problem in there for much of that game.
For the first half,
it was just too slow. But then when they did manage to stay in, and England did give penalties away, they attacked the corners and they were ruthlessly clinical. And you got to hand it to them.
5 out. That's something that you can't. Even Georgia, who we compliment a lot as a tier 2 side, they have struggled with that 5 out drill against tier 1 sides. It's very rare that you see your tier 2 side, even if they are clinical at their own level, manage to translate that to tier 1. And yet there was the US going to the corner 5 out and just striking. Great maul setup, great tries.
It was very encouraging
stuff from Gary Gould's charges. From an England point of view, there were a few notable takeaways. From a funny one was Eddie Jones's 6-2 split got exactly what it always seems to get, unless you're the Springboks, and in that 2 backs went down in the first half, as it always happens, and then suddenly you're in a hodgepodge state where there's a scrummy on the wing and an out half at fullback and guys all over the place, and there was
no good reason to do it. Like, the Boks is a very specific example where they wanted to, their forward impact was much greater than if they had like Elton Yankees on the bench, and they felt that their back subs were really only there for cover, and so they wanted the impact of those 6 forwards, and it was understandable in their case. But it has become a trend that is applied senselessly, and this was not a game that needed it. And England did look disjointed in the second half as a pure consequence of a silly decision.
Yes, it's true. It got exactly what it does. It's it's easy to tease England, but I've seen Leinster do it this season. They rock up with a 6-2 split, and then sooner than you do it, then your injury prone out half gets a knock in the first 10 minutes, and it's like, now it's a terrible decision, don't do that. That being said, it didn't end up mattering too much. Marcus Smith, despite having a little bit of a day of the hooks from the tee, but his passing was sharp as ever, and his running game still dynamic, and he was very, very pivotal in the scores that they did get to take that game away from America. I'm not. This isn't necessarily everyone's opinion about a young 10, but I'm just so much more interested when I watch a young 10 in his passing game than his kicking game. I feel like the kicking game is something that comes a little bit with experience and age, and it doesn't have to be perfect. But the raw talent with Marcus Smith is just sensational, and he just. I've been watching him now for months, waiting for him to misplace a pass. And he just doesn't.
They
go exactly where on the money every time. It can be a spin pass, a pop pass, a skip pass, or a short ball. It'll just go exactly where it needs to.
It needs to be, and quick, like a bullet. He doesn't float them. He bullet passes right to where they need to be.
So important. It's such a good skill. I wish Ireland would focus on it a bit more, to be honest. Not just from the 10s, but just the quality of pass from him is phenomenal. And then the bouncy running threat he offers is also pretty dynamic too. He's kind of a really good all-rounder. He was a wonderful playmaker and always a joy to watch. Likewise, actually, Henry Slade, who is also just a damn fine player. He took on a very good leadership role when that 6-2 split did kind of cave in on itself. He was kind of a de facto leader out there because he had a young guy at 10. You had a young guy. Randall was fantastic. He got man of the match actually from 9 as well. Drove a really nice tempo. But you had Slade, a couple of really classy touches for some of those tries that kind of settled the contest towards the end of the first half. He kind of took control when there was a danger of it getting scuttery, made sure they'd won the game, and then the US did come later on, but it was just, England had already done the professional thing and sewn up the victory.
It was nice to see Ollie Lawrence getting involved in the game as well. He hadn't been so not involved for England over the Six Nations, and we saw a lot of him. We saw perhaps too much on one occasion.
Oh yes, that's right. Mikey Teo was seeing to that. Full moon fever was striking and Twickenham. That's right. That was
as he
scored
moment. A try. That was
getting dragged arseways backwards. That was a funny moment. But from Eddie Jones's perspective, egg on face from the 6-2 split division that did predictably blow up in his face. But the flip side is, 7 tries, a victory, 12 debutants got their first cap.
Not bad,
really. You'll kind of, the dust will settle and it's well done. America, fireworks, 4th of July, great second half, and Eddie Jones going, I'm okay with this.
Yeah, and so are America. I mean, they're not going to go to Twickenham and win. They're not there yet, but they are moving. And I'm definitely happy to see them moving. They need to. There are some areas they need to improve in, and we'll get a good look at them in Dublin this week. But huge positives as well, and just a great game.
Absolutely.
And I suppose with that we will move on. We're going to move on now to the main show, really, in Test Rugby at the moment. The opening stanza of the series between the Wallabies and Les Bleus has concluded, and boy oh boy was it a dramatic game in Suncorp Stadium. 23-21 it finished. The Wallabies somehow got out of jail against a really good but maddening French team at the same time, and it was a brilliant game. I really enjoyed it. Super game.
Credit to Paul Williams, man in the middle with the whistle. Didn't see much of him at all game. He was a bit of a non-factor in my mind, which is great compliment to a ref. It was flowy, it was brilliant, the high tempo affair. It was a proper test match between, as we predicted, two sides that stack up really well with each other and ask good questions of each other. And the Suncorp Juju managed to dig Australia out, or maybe it was just France shooting themselves in the foot, or maybe a combination of both. It's kind of unfathomable how France managed to lose that from 15-0 up initially. And
they went to Villiers, got a brace. They went to took a 15-0 lead. Were all over the game. Did concede a try before halftime. It was 15-7.
That's right.
Didn't end up costing themselves another score before halftime. They were absolutely fantastic. It was a ding-dong battle. The Wallabies came back into it. The introduction of Tupou with 30 minutes to go when they were 8 points down changed the game. He's an X-Factor player. He's one of the best players in the world. He probably is the best tight head in the world now.
It's possible.
As much as I love Big Tig, he looks incredibly explosive. Corabetti was everywhere. There was a lot to enjoy. It was just a ding-dong battle. France opened the show with brilliance, and the Wallabies came back into it. Their pack looked mighty. Their scrum looked mighty. They were using their weight advantage. Philip looked like he bulked up. Salakai Loto looked like he bulked up.
Their whole back row was
Valentini, huge man. And Hooper was brilliant and dug them out. Really took on that captaincy role you saw towards the end of that game.
Actually, I thought Philip by the end of the first half was absolutely brilliant. That Maul time, the Payanga try that they got to make it 15-7, which proved crucial just to get on the board before half time, and they were willful. They kept kicking the corner, kept going for it, and they got their score. And likewise, credit where it's due, when they were 8 points down, they kicked to the corner to get the try, where a lesser team might have kicked 3, and a lesser students of the game would be saying, it's 100% what you do here. You have to kick the 3. It's a 2-score game, so you have to kick the 3 now and hope that you might get a chance to score a try later, as opposed to take the chance you have to score a try now and let's look for the 3-pointer later on, which was the right thing to do, and Australia did it and were rewarded for it.
Yes, it aged very well. I mean, they owned the ball. France did defend very well. They owned much of the game as the second half developed. France, I thought, to their credit, like some of the areas that we'd flagged as issues for them, like the exit, just weren't. Like
their kicking game was
Kuyu in scrum half was magnificent. They really seemed to have worked on that side of the game.
That's true.
And they
even Carbonell had a couple of nice ones. The big spiral
spirals,
bomb that yielded a uncharacteristic drop from Lolosio, that was a brilliant spiral kick that got them straight out again, and a perfect exit because now they have a
I
scrum.
think they were kicking from their own 22 into the opposition half, chasing up, making tackles, winning penalties, getting down the field. It was sensational. They really did turn around that part of the game, and they left the Aussies flapped. I think the criticism that I have of France that's still there, that still is contributing to why they haven't lifted a trophy yet, why they lost this game is because in key moments, they mismanaged the game. And there are a few that I can think of. There's one that's extremely harsh, that's kind of me just leaning into the whole don't take threes thing, but the reality is the kick to go 8-0 up. When you look at their red zone return from the game itself, they were perfect. They only had like a minute and a half in the Wallaby,
57 seconds or something.
In the Wallaby 22. They just scored tries every time they got in there, and they turned down a really valuable chance to get into the Wallaby 22 and attack that disjointed defense in favour of chipping over a 3 and taking an 8-0 advantage and taking it to the bank. The problem was they just didn't get into the red zone enough. They didn't win enough of those
problem they kept having from the Six Nations. It carries on here, and it's part of it is they do kick the threes, and you see in the few bits of Top Couture's footy that we've seen, there's an awful lot of that. There's a lot of beautiful rugby, like there's that jouet and French flair. That's all happens in the middle third, but when it breaks down in a penalty, they do just without even thinking, they just kick the 3. It's just what you do over there, and it's like there's a school of thought that thinks that's right, that we're sometimes naive madmen to be kicking the corner, and sometimes it definitely is, but France do it always, and they only scored 6 in the second half, and they lost the game by 2.
That was the other thing, is in the second half, classic France, they run out to a lead, they gas a bit, they're not quite themselves, then they end up sort of slowly wilting and fading as the game goes on, and they got a rare score to make it 18-10 before Tupou came on. They took that 3 points to make it a 2-score game. On that occasion, it wasn't an unreasonable thing to take that 3 points, but then immediately afterwards they dropped the restart, and it was actually Dante who dropped it, and he was brilliant from 12.
That was his one error.
Absolutely fabulous for the whole game, including coming up with what should have been the winning steal at the death. But just right after you've taken a 3-pointer to put the game back to a 2-score game, like if you're going to take that 3,
another one of those
you have to emphasise the exit, the key moment. That is such a key moment. It's massive, and they just, in that moment, they mismanaged things. And then obviously at the death, just complete madness. Complete madness.
Like I was excited. We were touting Jaminet. Jaminet was an exciting debutant, fresh from Pro D, top scorer in the Pro D. He kicked the other 3-pointer to move it out. He showed his kicking acumen with that. He showed a lot of good qualities, but then in that final quarter, he was calamitous. Like absolutely calamitous. Contributed to all of the Aussie scores, including the very last one by throwing them the ball when it was over the 80 minutes, and he could have just done anything other than that. Credit where it's due, it was Tupou again coming rampaging through on little Iribarin, and then it was Jaminet both shoveling it along because Tupou was down the thing, and then it ends up going to deck and into Corbett. It was obviously crazy, obviously ridiculous, obviously not something you recommend, but you have to give credit to that tight head who's charging down there when the game is all but gone.
I would touch on that as well. From an Aussie point of view, you got to see the benefit of having him on the bench, where you can just give him that explosive 30 minutes
against tired
bodies is right, and he just was everywhere. He was there in the loose, he was making killer incisive breaks that won them the game.
That
was there on defense.
That break he made from the midfield, so unlucky that didn't end up being a try. I think the kick ended up out on the full.
It was still crucial. It still pinned them back, and it was a big moment in the game. And then at scrum time, every scrum was just a pulsing Tupou show, where he just destroyed his man on the inside, and then left the French hooker vulnerable, and was doing damage.
One of the ones he just came clean through the pair of them. It was just Tupou shredding through their bind and out the other side of it, and it's like, oh my goodness, the man is a freak. Explosive
in the extreme. A phenomenal tight head who changed the course of the game magnificently. I mean, the Wallabies will be relieved. They were nowhere at the beginning of the game. Their first phase defense was shocking. They were completely completely
Paisami
exposed.
was dropping balls.
Paisami was okay.
He was okay,
but I enjoyed his
just in that
performance,
first quarter. He was a symptom. As same thing. Lolosio looked very young then. Gordon was a little slow. There was drop balls from him.
That 9, 10, 12 axis didn't offer a huge amount, and Gordon had a couple of loose kicks. I would have preferred to see McDermott, and McDermott was better when he came on.
True.
But they were also just a little disjointed. It was their first game of the season.
It's their second. It's not their first choice halfback pairing as well. There's a little chopping and changing that goes on with that. That being said, some members of their team did perform really well. Tom Wright, however, didn't quite fall for him. He was great last time.
It fell for him.
It fell right through his hands, and the Frenchman going, "Oh my God, I can't believe it!" It wasn't a good look for him. He had been brilliant last year, and he's in there on merit, but didn't quite fall for him the bench of the ball this time. Whereas Corabetti was looking so good out there. He's such a turbo man, such a great engine.
Bits of what they were doing were great, and they got their offense going there. They won the forward battle. They weathered the French storm. They came back into it. They started to own the territory game. They started to get their foot on the ball. Their offense can be better and needs to be better. And you just think of the Paisami try that wasn't, and the right try that you pointed out, which wasn't, which was a lovely kick in behind from Paisami.
That's true.
That ended up creating that, and it should have been a score. But you think as the season goes on, those will be scores, and they definitely will be mighty relieved and delighted to come out the right end, and it could just be what they need, the break they need to spur them on for a tough season ahead.
Well, it's true. Well, now they have a leg up. Like, they haven't won a home series in quite a while. I know they lost the series to Ireland a few years ago. They got whitewashed by England a few years before that. They're kind of, obviously we were making mention in our preview of this whole tour, our series preview, that it's kind of it's Vive la Renaissance is what this is being branded at. They're both young coming teams, having come from kind of relative rugby wilderness for nearly nigh on a decade, the pair of them. So this would be a very positive result if they are one result away from chalking up a home series win against a team of the calibre of France. That would be huge for the Wallabies.
It'd be
great feather in Rennie's cap as well, as he kind of, it's only a young tenure. It feels like it's been Rennie's Wallabies for a while, but he's a relatively new coach in there, and it's already, the green shoots are evident.
Yeah, absolutely.
That being said, France should have won.
And Kulu was brilliant. His kicking game is better than Dupont's. Like, it's a real thing. Like, they don't necessarily pick when their first team is out. The balance isn't right as far as having kickers of the ball. I still don't understand why they didn't get Boutier on. You get Boutier on, you win that game. French coaching ticket. I don't know why they hate him. He's been nothing but brilliant in a French jersey. I've been calling for him for the last year, and he's just out of the equation. I even watched him for Montpellier, and he was the best player on the pitch. I'm just like, what's going on? He's on the bench. Get him on the pitch. Don't leave young fullback on there to throw the ball and the game away at the same time. It was just silly. But Dante from 12, magnificent. Gélange captaining the side, some lovely touches. One
ridiculous touch, which was kind of more dialed out France than just him, but it was like just before half time where he caught the ball off. He didn't fully expect it. They looked like they were going to box kick it, but then thought against it and then shipped it onto him, and then he just stood there and just kind of stopped and kind of put his hand out, and then got stripped and then gave away a pen, and then it was like it didn't end up amounting to anything, but they did. It was the exact same thing as like the Scotland game as well. They just giving needless ins. That was at the right of the death of the half. I was
trying to give a man a compliment. I mean, he had that was one mistake.
That was the one mistake. But I was citing.
He had a good offload in the build up to one of the early tries,
and actually Cretan was excellent beside him as well in the back row. The pair of them were busy the whole time.
And Villiers obviously grabbing 2 tries, looking hungry. First phase attack's good. But yes, that was that game, and a magnificent game it was. The two will go head to head in the second game on Tuesday.
Yes,
that's the 13th of July next week.
Amy Park in Melbourne is the location for this one. So they're moving away for this before they have to return to Suncorp. And a relatively new coaching ticket. I think it's James Dolman's first
refereeing ticket.
Refereeing ticket, yes. Official match day officials. I think James Dolman of New Zealand is taking his first Test match, so congrats to him. He'll have Paul Williams and Mike Fraser for company on the touchline, and Brendan Pickerel, an all Kiwi kind of match day officials or officials team, which is fair enough to be honest. I think they'll keep a good flow of game. They kind of both understand how both teams will want to play, and I think it'll facilitate good rugby.
I would no concerns on the refs at this juncture. We obviously don't have the squads at the moment, but it'll be interesting to see how the series develops, and we're going to take a look at what both teams need to do to adjust and get the win. Starting with the Wallabies, of course, the home side, the side that's 1-0 up now.
Yeah.
They have options as far as their squad is concerned. You know, it's a 6-day turnaround. We spoke about Tupou, McDermott, maybe getting those guys involved.
Yeah.
There's potential that JOC could be involved as well.
That'd be good to see.
And yeah, they've other options in their squad as well. Muirhead is a guy on the wing who I like. He could come in. Fraser McWright has some test experience. He could come in.
That's true.
Even Perez, there's been a lot of talk about as well. He could come in as well. So I'd be curious to see how much they mix things up. Yeah. They'll be very, very happy with their forward pack, their set piece. All of that was lovely. The maul, the scrums. Yeah. That's only going to get better as well.
Even actually the performance of Swain on debut off the bench for Philip, and he was spearheading mauls much like Philip was. So it was just good to see that depth coming in. Similarly, Ikitau, they had a couple of. I think they had 4 debutants last week off the bench as well. Ikitau, and then Ikitau and your man on the wing. Oh, the rebel name.
The Kellaway.
Kellaway, yes, both made debut, and then there were a couple in the pack, including Swain, who I thought was probably the most impressive of them, just because of how much he got done, how much work he got through in the tight. So yeah, those are good options for them as well. They will want to rotate the squad because, as we were saying in our main preview vid of the series, they're probably a little stretched thin. They have a few injuries. They don't quite have the full squad of depth that they will hope to have by the World Cup. They're not quite there yet. This is a good building block for them. They do
have some options still, and in the context of winning the series, obviously with the 6-day turnaround, it would make sense to get 1 or 2 in. I think the key work-ons, obviously delighted with the forward pack, the set piece, but the offense probably needs a bit of work. We saw in moments them getting into some good rhythms and them accessing the wide channels. Koulibaly was everywhere and a delight, but they probably didn't put him in the kind of space they want to put him in enough.
He was coming off his wing to find work as opposed to being put into the space to finish tries.
There was dynamic carrying. Wilson was involved. There was tremendous mauling, that kind of attack, tight attack, and then good kicks in behind. But and Paisami was picking some great lines. I thought the Paisami try that was kind of the try we described in terms of breaking up that Edwards defence, where you just ferocious carry off first phase, and then before you know it, the ball has gone to another short line, and that was beautiful, except for the fact that it was a forward pass. So they need to tighten up 1 or 2 things, but I also think they do need to work that Aussie screen back in, get Lolosio a little bit wider, and try and just really stretch the French defence as well as everything else, because when they're tight and explosive and they always go for the short ball, they can leave themselves open to the poach, which they happened to them a few times.
Yeah, well, certainly that was their bane in the Rugby Champion, or not the Tri Nations as it was last year. They were just being
and a couple of times on the weekend
putting together lovely sequences, and then ultimately it didn't amount to anything. And Dante was doing it as well.
Naisarani, that last minute carry that should have lost them the game, when Naisarani gets over the gain line but just lands at the feet of Dante, and then it looks like game over.
It should have been game over. But yeah, no, those are definite work-ons that will come with time. Like things like obviously you mentioned Wright dropping that ball over the thing. Paisami, if the pass wasn't forward, that's 14 points right there. That's the game over. Then it's a hammering.
It's one way to look at it.
But those little moments of being a bit more clinical will come with time. They kind of what's encouraging is that their shape looks good.
Their shape does look good.
Their back row look mobile. They look fit.
Yeah,
they look
really like Harry
ready.
Wilson from 8. I think he's a fine player. I know he gave up the ball. He had one bad moment where he kicked the ball out of the scrum and let France in for their opening try, which is like when they're so limited in terms of opportunities given. Don't do that. But outside of that, I thought their pack was really good, really mighty, really balanced.
Alalato actually locked down. It went perfectly to plan, because he had a dynamic battle in which he was not quite edging it, but certainly giving as good as he got and locking it down, and it just meant that when you could roll Tupou out, it worked a treat. And it wouldn't surprise me to see them flip that role entirely now, have Tupou do his big shift, and then have Alalato come in for the last 20. It seems to make sense if you have 2 tight heads that you trust and a 3-match series in 11 days.
Yeah,
you're going to spread the starting jersey around.
Rotate it. I mean, Tupou is no stranger to doing long stints as well.
Yeah.
But having him on in short stints definitely adds to it. The other key work on for the Wallabies ahead of this one, as well as the kicking game, which is important as well. Like, they want to just get more air on the ball. Some of their kicks were pretty shallow. Jake Gordon didn't have a great game with the boot. Banks is dialing in his boot, and he's their number 1 guy for exiting. I would love to see them get him in the pocket and really try and bomb the ball deep.
He does have that in him.
Yeah, they need to.
Too often it was Lolosio had a couple of loose ones, but so did Tamua as well. Just the kind of the whole the dinky, the rugby league kick that they do.
Yeah, well, just from their own half. They were outshone in the kicking game by the French, which is unlike them.
Yeah.
But the other key one is just the first phase defense. I mean, France with precious few options, they managed to to cut them open. The Wallabies, they're no strangers to the inside ball or the blindside wingers, but they got to track the French runners because they're coming from everywhere. You got to track them. You can't be leaving soft holes. And there was the Villiers try as well. I can't remember. I wish I could remember who it was, but one of the Aussie lads, a back rower, came storming off and actually overran Villiers, and the ball ended up going in behind him. He needs to just plant his feet and track Villiers and make sure that guy is not getting the ball. You know, if he gets the ball, I have him.
I'm not sure if it was the back row. I think actually Gordon and Lolosio shot up on that, both on the 10. Gordon, I think the pair of them came herring after the 10 and then just
or was Dante who gave the soft ball
after Dante, and then just the inside ball took both of them out of it, and then through he went. It was a lovely score from a French point of view. But from a Wallaby point of view, you want to tighten up things like that. Certainly Dave Rennie you have the tape on them, you know what to expect. You do need to guard those runners. It doesn't make it easy to stop, but you can't leave the hole that easy.
No question. And from a French point of view, for Les Bleus, they obviously have to pick themselves up the floor and keep fighting. They can take much encouragement from that day at the office. They're more than capable of mixing it, as we knew they would be. In fact, some of the changes that are seen to be, this is a French C team, some of them are positive. The fact is that this crop of players is better suited to getting out of their own territory is a great sign. Much of that game was played in the middle third.
That's true.
Which is an improvement on constantly being under siege.
Yes, that was their whole Six Nations campaign was spent in their own 22 for the most part.
That much is true, absolutely. And then obviously the main point that I was talking about was just the big moments. Exit after a big second half score. They have to focus on those kinds of things. Identify when they have the initiative and go after the try. Those things are important. I'd love to see them work on them. I'd love to see
top 2 inches stuff is what's needed across this whole French team, and it's not just the personnel involved, it's just a winning culture that needs to be developed. And as opposed to the last couple of games, which has been the Aussie game and then the Scotland one that finished the kind of damp squib that ended their Six Nations, it's like losing games at the death like that is not going to help your confidence. They need to remedy that. This isn't at some corporates at Amy Park. This should have been the one they'd be targeting anyway. Certainly it's the one in my mind that they have the best chance of winning. Hopefully they will rise to the occasion. The fear is that there's a bit of or go down like a lead balloon if you feel aggrieved, if you feel you should have won that game, which may be true, but you can't let it get down in the dumps. You have to take the positives. Here we are, we have very little test experience, we're in Australia, we put it up to them, we should have won,
we can attack,
we can do this. You want to see them, we can, as opposed to we should have.
Of course. No, they don't need to be beating themselves up. They do have some potential squad rotation they could make as well. The likes of Diallo from Racing could come in. Teddy Thomas and Racing are wing stocks that they have. Raka, I said Raka and Teddy Thomas, class wingers.
They aren't bad actually, those lads. They're pretty tasty.
Both awesome wingers could get in. Boutier, obviously, I'd like to see involved. They could also bring in someone like Awoki and try and attack that line out, because the maul was doing bits, and if they can disrupt the line out ball, they can get on top of it by one way or another. They have to stop it, like by either getting your hands through and fighting Phillip, or by poaching the ball off the line out,
which Awoki might be their best guy in squad at that particular skill.
They need to get that dialed in and take that away from Australia, because that's a huge area.
It's true. The maul did pay good dividends for them as well. I was alarmed to see, or not alarmed, just surprised to see the disparity in pack weight, that the Wallabies were that much heavier than them. But it kind of on reflection made sense, because although they had the big meaty locks last week, the Australian locks look bigger than the last time we saw them on a test pitch. And then you look at the back row and opting for like Makalou and Cretan and Jelonch.
Cretan is big, but Jelonch and Makalou
are kind of rangy. And then you look at the Valentini and even Wilson and Hooper, they're stocky guys. They're squatting, they're packing on the kgs. So there's a lot of weight in that Wallaby pack. There's a lot of heft in that scrum. So it wasn't all like the France couldn't really target them at that area, which traditionally they may have done, but they could find seams off first phase. They could strike and rip through them with very clinical attack, and they have wingers to bring in.
And they could disrupt the line out if they get up a couple of jumpers up. If they dial that in and put pressure on Payanga Mosa's throw, then it's a different game. If the Wallabies can't get secure line out ball, it's a different game. That'd be a huge area of working on that I'd like to see. I'd also like, of course, to see them defend with the same tigerishness, just to get on top of the ball. But obviously in the second half, they need to identify in moments when they're a little tired, and they just need to be solid and not go crazy and start just like throwing hands into every ruck, jumping offside.
That's true,
given the Wallabies entrances.
The enthusiasm they have in defence these days is encouraging. That's great. But when it gets over exuberant is when you just get you're undoing, you're right to say they're exiting much better than they were in the Six Nations. but for every exit there was a cheap re-entry granted. Like, you'll exit and then you give away a ridiculous penalty in the middle third, and then you're back here again having to exit.
No, you're 100% right. It's a killer. That is a killer, and they definitely need to work on that.
True.
On offense, just keep probing. Hopefully they can generate a few more chances for themselves.
That's it. The chances they have are normally taken. They just don't create that many.
Exactly. They just don't put themselves in the right areas of the pitch enough. But when they do, it'd be nice to see them. Obviously, Pinot was pretty starved of ball. It'd be nice to see them stretch the field.
Ball at all, even down to the last play of the game where he went inside and the ball was thrown to the deck outside of him. He didn't seem to get a touch last week. Wherever he went, the ball went the other way. We know he can be very dangerous. He just didn't get on the ball. I wouldn't mind seeing him out again. That being said, he may be hauled out of there because of that. You'd probably keep Villiers, the 2 try scorer.
When you look at the likes of Teddy Tonga, you wouldn't mind giving him a go, but especially that guy can create something from anywhere. But you'd like to see them get to the tram lines, probe a little more. Part of the reason why you didn't see them so much is because they scored so quickly, but you would expect Australia to make some adjustments, and you would expect them not to be as porous. But I'd love to see France get those rhythms going and maintain that sort of classy edge that they have on offense, where they just get scores from everywhere.
Yeah, that's what you love from France. You love, and it is just, as you were billing it, it's probably the best test rugby we've got for the next couple of weeks. It's really, really good. They're two sides that it's just impossible not to like. Nigh on love the way they go about playing the game.
Yeah, I'm loving them. It is the Renaissance. They're both class young sides who I wish nothing but good for, and I think both on the right direction.
What a peach they were treated to in Suncorp. It went right down to the wire. 8-point deficit overcome in like 6 minutes. Crazy Suncorp juju in the air. French calamity at the end. All kinds of drama, and it'll only get better though, because it's a 3-match series. They don't come around that often, as you were saying. It's not even that these two face each other as often as all that. So we're just going to enjoy what's in store over the next couple of weeks, starting with that second test on Tuesday.
Yeah, no question. How do you see it going, test 2?
I'm going to stick to my guns and say Les Bleus get it done and drive it to a decider. I don't know if that's the more likely outcome. I suspect it
might be.
I hope is that a 2-point win for France. Why not? Saying just the reverse of it. Even it out. But the fear is that they'll be deflated from that they'll take. I don't want to see a France that are like, going victim mode because we should have won that game. You don't want to be in that mindset. But if they come out all guns blazing, I'm going to say France do get done this time.
I like that positivity. I think that the Wallabies have dusted down the cobwebs, and they have a mighty pack, and they're going to have a mightier scrum if Tupou comes into the team. And that'll be too much for a French team at the end of a very long season, and I think they'll probably take it to 2-0. That's my prediction.
Yeah, fair enough.
Not a fan favourite, but that's what I reckon.
We want a deciding fixture. That's what we want.
Of course,
because we want to preview it. We want to get into it. Either way, we do want to watch it. So that one, as I said, goes on Tuesday, and before they wrap it up, then the weekend following. So it's a very quick turnaround, but an exciting test series. Can't wait to see more of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, we're going to move on to another very, very exciting game that's going on this weekend. The Pacific Celebration, as they've put it, continues, and it is sort of the showpiece event of the best two teams in that area, Oceania. The All Blacks against Fiji. The All Blacks, the best team in rugby historically, and Fiji arguably the most entertaining in rugby historically.
Olympic champions in sevens. Fiji, love it. That's going to be at Forsyth Bar this Saturday, the 10th. Kickoff, that's 8:05 in the morning, our time. So some other time over there, probably 7:05 in the evening, if I'm remembering that correctly. But referee Nick Berry from Australia, an all Oz kind of match official team. He has Damon Murphy and Graham Cooper on the sidelines with James Lickey in the TMO. So the Aussies are going to be watching these All Blacks and Fijians throwing the ball about. It's going to be a fantastic spectacle. I'm almost certain that this Fiji side will provide stiffer opposition than the Tongans did.
No question.
Fact, I am 100% certain of that because we've seen the team and it's actually a bloody good one. Fiji unless the most ridiculous thing could happen, they're always going to have good players. Fiji just produce great rugby players, and this squad are kind of waiting in the grass. Vern Cotter has done a great job with this Fiji side over the last few years and really got them.
Yeah, he's come in and it's exciting. I mean, I think now that they've got these class coaching tickets together, they've got quite a settled team.
Yeah, Fiji and Drua coming into the Super Rugby picture as well. Fiji rugby kind of on the up in terms of just the kind of zeitgeist humour of it, more so than Tonga anyway, there was all kinds of talk about this, it's not fair this, it's not fair that. No such talk about this one. This is a great series, a great way for the All Blacks to get their hit out in advance the Rugby Championship. Great opportunity for Fiji likewise to play against the mighty All Blacks. I think it's going to be a really, really good spectacle of rugby. As much as a festival of Islander rugby, I think it's going to be just a great spectacle, because just the way these two sides play, it's like impossible not to like. It's impossible for these two to play a non-entertaining game.
It's true. Like you were saying, Vern Cotter's come in now after the World Cup. He's brought in the likes of a couple of Crusaders forwards guys. Jason Ryan's come in. Daryl Gibson has come in. They've got like a decent brains trust around them. But still, there is the issue surrounding Fiji that they've only played one test since 2019, which was last autumn against Georgia. And like Tonga, they have had major hurdles assembling all their best players. They've obviously missed some guys who are off trying to make the 7 circuit. Ranradra's off trying to get an Olympic gold, so good on him. Fair play. Fair play to him. And then obviously they've had issues with COVID, so they haven't been able to play much domestic footy over the last while. Likewise, they had issues with a couple of guys stranded. I believe Franklin Manny, their main starting scrum half, he's stranded off in Australia, so they're without him. So there are some hurdles in front of Fiji, but all in all, they're not too bad. They're pretty settled. For the All Blacks, last week they were awesome. I have 102 points. I don't care who it's against. That's fabulous stuff. And they just they want that number 1 spot back. They want it back now.
They want it really bad.
And I think they're coming for it. And I think this is a good opportunity. It's a good stepping stone for them as they build towards Bledisloe and then the Rugby Championship. I think this is a perfect little adjustment stepping stone. Fiji will be good. They'll test their defence.
They will.
But this is a chance for them just to establish some rhythms and basically keep that momentum going, because they look a confident, classy team at the moment.
It's true. And they've named a pretty exciting team to start this one as well. Like, completely changed from last week, which is also good. But will I rattle through it? I guess
I can rattle through it if you want. We've got George Bauer, who's in, obviously having made his debut last week. 7 years ago, I believe he was a hairdresser or something.
That's right.
He's one of these ones with the mad story.
Made his debut last week against Tonga at 29 years old. The Crusaders prop, where he had been. That was a good little outfit piece.
He's taken the starting berth in the Crusaders, and now he's into the All Blacks team, which is exciting for him. Cody Taylor, Nepo Lalala make up the front row. They got Tui Pilato and Brody Retallick in the locks. That's probably their first choice
haven't
pairing.
Seen that one yet.
Whitelock covering on the bench.
It's going to be awesome.
They've got Frizzell, who's awesome in the loose. Ethan Blackadder, tigerish player. Hoskins Satutu at 8, and then their backline is absolutely stunning. I mean, in my book, there's been a lot of different hype trains about various different players in both 9 and 10 shirts, but in my book, there's no better halfback pairing than Aaron Smith and Bowden Barrett. I don't think anyone touches them. I think the speed and sharpness of the pair of them is extremely exciting, and I'm delighted to see them playing together again. And I think it's going to be very, very, very interesting. At centre, they have the prodigal centre partnership, the one that we're all hoping, well, from an All Black point of view, they can stick to and that can work, is David Havili and Rico Ioane. The form 12 and 13, can they get this area right? If these guys go well, I think they'll have the jersey for the next year or so anyway. They'll be incumbents heading into World Cup year. 5 years time. The distribution from both of them, the passing from both of them, the running from just the out and out speed. They're both converted from the back 3, so they're just so quick as well. That could be a really, really exciting centre partnership in an area that, as we've cited, they have struggled to kind of decide what they're really doing there for quite a while. There's a lot of talk goes about the Barrett Mo'unga axis and stuff, but they haven't really figured out their centres, and if this goes well, this could be nail meeting head, and right there. 100%. In the back 3, they've gone with, in the absence of Caleb Clark, who's still injured, they've gone with George Bridge and Seva Reese, that Crusaders partnership that's so good on the wings. They could be the incumbents for the year, really classy players. And then Jordy Barrett gets his chance to nail down a marker on the 15 jersey, with Mackenzie left on the bench itself. Dane Coles to come in, Ethan de Groot from the Highlanders covering loose head, Tyrrell Lomax covering tight head, Whitelock covering lock, Luke Jacobson covering the back row. Finlay Christie gets another chance at scrum half, and he'll come on, and then the very cruel seeming Damien McKenzie and Will Jordan both to emerge as well.
When you're getting a little tired, those two coming in look hungry for tries. Is
there some concern about the prop stocks in New Zealand?
Just a smidge.
like when you compare it to every other position,
when you
where there's
compare it
just
to everywhere
phenomenal
else.
depth and quality, and then you have like a guy who's a hairdresser. I mean, no disrespect to George Barry's class, Nepalala is very good as well, but I'd like certainly when compared to say Kitsoff, Marks and Malherbe,
yes,
it doesn't quite have the same ferocity to it as a front row. They'll have to, when the Bok game comes at the end of all of this Lions talk, there's going to be a game of games between the All Blacks and the Boks come season's end.
Yeah.
And when that game comes around, that's the one area, the one chink in the All Blacks armour at the moment.
Yeah,
their front row is
and untested as well, because
as good as the hookers are.
A whole load of domestic rugby where the Kiwis will just willingly just go through the scrum without being
just
that
ignore
aggressive.
The scrum.
Both sets of props will just kind of shake hands before the game and be like, we'll just lock it down. We'll just lock it down and get it out the back. It's fine. It's fine. There's no like Springboks in the mud there trying to absolutely turf you, either rip you hoist you in the air like a flag, or smush you into the mud.
Yeah.
Either of those things would be fine to a Springbok.
Even Tupou might be waiting. Well, even Tupou especially might be waiting in the long grass for these All Black props. But outside of that, the talent in this team is just phenomenal.
That is like a small caveat to attach to what is otherwise a very, very, very dangerous team.
Yeah.
And by contrast to, not even contrast, Fiji named their team also, and a pretty good one it is. Very a few familiar faces. We have Rituva, Matavesi, and what is his name?
Doge. It's the same. It's the same forward pack, with just the addition of Leone Nakarawa.
Yes.
It's the same forward pack that went to the Nations Cup and played against Georgia. So they're actually, for all of the talk of disjointedness, they're a pretty together squad from Vern Cotter. Like, they know what they're doing.
They have, and like it goes back to that game of games that they beat the French in France, and it was built on defence. That was a while ago as well, but a lot of these charges were involved in that too. So there's a lot of good stuff that Vern Cotter has done. That was
Kunavula's breakout game, I believe, and he's in there at 7, Tuisui at 8, Johnny Dyer at 6. Maya Vanua and he's been in there for a while himself, but I'm a little concerned personally about Leone Nakarawa. He returned to Glasgow earlier in the year and was out of shape and just sad looking, and then his transfer to Ulster has been cancelled because he didn't pass a medical, and I mean, like, he just looks out of shape and a little kind of jaded, I think, and past it a little bit, and he's only still over there because he needs to make the money, and it's just kind of it's for one of the most entertaining players of the last decade. It's kind of looking like a petering out end to a career, and certainly we don't need dialed out no good Nakarawa to rock up and place Brodie Retallick. Like, that can't happen. You have to be 110% to take on these guys, and I don't know if Nakarawa is, so it definitely feels like he's been thrown in there.
He's been such a stalwart for them for so long, but I agree with you, this year has not been good for him, and he hasn't looked himself. Just to go through the back line, we have Kurivali coming in for Lamani, and he's just had 2 starts. That's a bit of inexperience at 9, but he is partnering Ben Volavola, the ever-present, one of the best out-halves you'll see in a tier 2 side at all. He's absolutely fantastic. And then the familiar sight of Nadolo on one wing with who is it? Ironi Sau on the other wing, unbelievable. And Murray Valu at fullback with the familiar Botia at 12 and Naya Kalevu at 13 in the absence of Radradra, who, as you said, is hunting Olympic gold. So he's with the 7s.
The absence of Tuisova as well, which is obviously a weakness. Those are really 2 of their main men. Ironi Sau is a funny one from Edinburgh. Like, he's definitely good. He has his moments, but it's probably not as explosive as they can be in the back
certainly
3.
Not as explosive as like Radradra or Tuisova. You chuck them into any team and they're instantly more explosive.
It's true. They're 3 British-based Fijians in the back 3, which is not ideal, I wouldn't have thought.
No.
But Nadolo is still explosive, and they still have potential to burn. There's no question.
That being said, the Premiership this year was played at quite a Fijian pace. It
was
basketball scores, high scores, and good rugby.
That's entirely fair. That is entirely fair. That's definitely true. They have a bit of explosivity to come on off the bench as well in Perseli Yato and Matt Taeli, who's the back 3 player I would have played for the breakout season with the Crusaders this year. Very, very fine winger. Looking forward to seeing Matt Taeli get a run out.
It's nice to see them have some depth to spring off the bench, even in the absence of some of those guys we mentioned. But then it's not surprising, because always Fiji have really good rugby players to bring to a rugby game. Looking
at the game from the point of view of each side, starting just with the All Blacks, I mean, they looked stunningly good in the first game of the year, and they're building towards the World Cup glory after a ropey season last year. I remember Ian Foster talking about working on at the beginning of the season, working on skills and discipline. So it'll be interesting to see how much that sort of message has been hammed home, and how much they're going to show off their skills up against one of the most skilled sides in rugby. I mean, there's so much talent in the squad, it's kind of scary. If they can get into any kind of rhythm, any kind of flow, they'll be just impossible to stop. The speed and precision of the passing and running game of these guys is another level.
And then the calibre of guys that they're going to spring off the bench, and the hunger of all of them to retain their jerseys in time for that rugby championship.
Like how much pressure are the likes of even Bowden Barrett. Like if Bowden Barrett goes badly, he's under massive pressure, because then you're going Mo'unga and McKenzie, please. And likewise for McKenzie coming off the bench, likewise for Barrett starting, Jordy Barrett I should say, like that the pressure on these guys who are extraordinary players is incredible.
It's exactly what fuels this All Black rugby that we love seeing, and furious tempo is what we're going to see from them. If they can set a rhythm at all, it'll be very tough for what is a very able, much improved Fiji defence, and guys like Bodia are very, very good defenders, but if the All Blacks are able to set their rhythm and able to get on top of the breakdown, on top of the set piece a little bit, and then just set a rhythm, then it could get ugly very quickly.
I mean, they have multiple ways they could go about it. They could try and shake up the Fijians physically if they think Nakarawa is not at the right kind of frame of mind, sending Tui Pilatu down his channel and getting on top of him that way. That is a way of doing it. We know how good they are on transition, on turnover ball, on kick return, but it'll be curious to see how much they can get off in the multi-phase. First phase and multi-phase. Are they going to expand their game to the point where they have like strike plays that are more polished than what they have had in seasons gone by? And to what extent is the centre partnership going to work? Are they going to be able to break down a defence from slow ball in a multi-phase way? Or are they going to, kick it if things don't go their way, as they did last year? They as much as like the Aotearoa has given a good feeling, Super Rugby Trans-Tasman has given a good feeling, the 102 point Tonking has given them a good feeling. They still have the cloud of a dodgy season last year. As much as they won that Tri-Nations,
it's still a dodgy season because they lost a couple of games, they drew a game.
They weren't themselves.
That's not what they want. They want unbeaten seasons. That's what their bar is. It's up there at the never lose a game kind of. That's where they want to be.
Well, they never lost to Argentina until last year, and it was a tough game for them. Like they were just defended, and they weren't able to break down that defense, and that's like something to be looking for. If Fiji are game on defense and they're not shying away from the contact, can the All Blacks break them down?
Because we've seen from Fiji, like again, citing that France game, that was a very dangerous French team as well, that Fiji defended for 80 minutes, and they were game for it, hungry for it throughout, and managed to squeak a win in a low scoring game in France. They'd be more than happy to do that. If they won the game 3-0, they'd bite your hand off for it.
Of course,
but
don't think they will.
But defensive cohesion is something that Vern Cotter seems to have instilled in his side. They were good in that area in the Autumn Nations Cup, even in the one game that we did see from them, and in that as well. There's a lot to admire about them, just in terms of, for a tier 2 side, for an Islander side, they have shown more defensive organisation in the last 18, maybe 24 months than you would see from any of them throughout history. I think it's probably the best coached defence of any Pacific Islander team I've ever seen.
There's no doubt about that. I definitely agree with you. I think they're in fine fettle, and their technical tackling is great as well. So that will prove a proper challenge for the All Blacks. And on defence and set piece as well, it'll be curious to see if the All Blacks can get on top of the Fijians and attack them in those areas and take the game away from them, or will they sort of allow it to be a blow for blow, our offence against your offence,
shootout, celebration of Islander rugby.
Exactly. The All Blacks might back themselves in that department, but that is a way in for Fiji. As far as Fiji are concerned, I think all of this talk about how disrupted the Islander rugby is, and how Tonga last week, and people have been trying to sort of add a story about Fiji on top of the Tongan story, and they have had their COVID issues, they've had certain issues, but I kind of think they're waiting in the tall grass, if not for the All Blacks, then for somebody, because I think they're, as you pointed out, they're building nicely. They have a very settled squad. And they could, if they have confidence in their own ability, they can certainly get some plays off, and they can certainly disrupt the All Blacks for a time.
They have the calibre to do it against any team. That's what we always say with Fiji. It's like it's a few things that are a few kind of resource based things that are keeping them from really being a tier 1 side, keeping them down in that way. But when you look at the calibre of their player in position and position, like, they have the talent. They are of a tier 1. Every player there is a top level player,
in terms of skills,
top level
in terms
professional
of,
player, and their role in the club that they're in. They're all in different clubs, but invariably in their club they're the star player or the token guy who's going to unpick a defense, the guy you can trust to do something fantastic to get your offense going. They're all guys like that, so it's like there's no reason for them to not come together and be cohesive and be a really good force, especially in World Cups. But this isn't one. This is them out of camp. As you say, they do have some issues with COVID. Not everyone's available. He's stuck in Australia and all this. I expect a little bit of disjointedness that will probably lead to the All Blacks maybe taking the game away from them in this instance because of that. That doesn't vindicate that kind of sensationalist story you're talking about, where there's crisis this, crisis that. I think actually Fiji will show something in this game. I hope they manage to stick a few passes, find a nice try, which they're usually good for. But I'd also like to see some good defensive hustle. That's really what I admire about this iteration of Fiji, as I was saying, over the last 2 years. I think they're reborn in terms of their intent and their organisation on D. And I would love to see them stymie some All Blacks. Like we've seen the All Blacks play 80 minutes. I don't think any of their offensive drives were repelled. They scored 102 points with no opposition. They scored 3 tries in the first 6 minutes. So maybe, Bottia will get over one of those breakdowns and get a steal.
Exactly.
And then it's game on.
and on offense as well, listen, the All Black centre partnership is a little new, it's brand new, and it potentially is brittle in terms of its confidence levels. And if Bottia can sit one of them down, get on top, like they have a lot of hard, powerful runners. So if they generating first phase momentum shouldn't be difficult with a bit of deception, trusting Volavola or the young scrummy to make the right pass. But then you can have any one of Nyakalevu, Bottia or Nadolo picking a hard line in that midfield, sitting down the defence. If you can get around the corner and be quick, you have a real chance to test the edge. And then as you say, as you rightly point out, the quality is there all over, from Kunavula, Ravai, Lucid. Like they can all play and they can all find the right passes, and if they can just get that like second and third phase rhythm going after sitting down the All Blacks,
have a little bit of a plan, have a shape and a plan to do that first phase, this second phase, strike over here on third phase. Even a simple rudimentary 3-phase strike play like that, if they can execute well, they have the quality to sit the guys down, to get the passes going and to find the tries. It would be lovely to see some of those moments go
Nobody
right for Fiji.
throws offloads and runs tracking lines quite as well as these boys in their pumps, so that much is true. I think you're right to point out the importance of defence, and I would add to that discipline. I think discipline is huge, especially in this game, because both of these teams, including the All Blacks, have a capacity to allow penalties to snowball and to give away tilted penalties when flapped. We said
or just
earlier
when defending. If you keep them in their 22 for a few minutes, the All Blacks will give exactly. Even 30 seconds, they'll give up a penalty.
And we said earlier on, like one of the only avenues for a tier 2 team to pull off an upset is to dominate the penalty count, and that much is definitely true of this game. And you can see it going either way. If Fiji get on top, the All Blacks are sat down and they're a little annoyed and the ball is too quick for them to deal with, they'll just put a hand in there, they'll give away penalties, they'll be silly. But if Fiji are just a little off the pace, they'll jump out of the line, they'll hit high tackles, they'll be loose, and then they'll give away
what you
penalties.
don't need is body a yellow or red card straight away. Too high in the tackle.
They have to be sharp, That much is crucial.
It's true, and discipline is so vital. Sure, you saw the example is that the second half in that Georgia game, South Africa Georgia, where it was just penalty. We're a little tired, we're beaten, so every phase a penalty, every penalty a line out, every line out a try, and then we restart with a penalty. And so that can definitely go it can snowball very easily. If Fiji do end up picking up a card for a reckless shot, or picking up sustained pressure, card, tilted, more penalties, all of that will just the All Blacks will eat that up. They have to be calm, have to have a good cohesive plan to disrupt, be ready to take their chances on offense, which we know they are. Those are the instincts that I wouldn't fear for them. Defensive cohesion, organisation, a bit of calm. A bit of calm is such a coveted thing when you're an underdog team away from home against the mighty All Blacks. It's tough to be calm. It's easy to get panicked, easy to get flapped. I'm sure they'll be given plenty of chances to get tilted or get flapped in this game. It's not going to go their way for large periods. I'm saying the All Blacks will have at least one purple patch.
Yes,
you know, you need to be ready for that eventuality and not be tilted.
No, indeed. Keep playing your game. Kick the ball when you need to. You've got some big boots in there in Nadolo and
Volavola will have to lead that, especially without Lomani on the pitch now.
Even Nadolo, though, he has some bombs in him. There was a time when he was the only man in the Fiji jersey you could kick, and he was taking place kicks and all
number
sorts
11
of
on his back. That's right.
But it'd be nice to see them just play a smart game, and who knows, Cotter coached Fiji. You know, if they're dialed in, if they're motivated, and if you see the little nuggets of Vern Cotter in them, you know, we could be in for a game here. But if any of that isn't at fever pitch exactly where it needs to be, then we won't have a game at all, because the All Blacks are that good.
You'll probably know that within the first minute and a half.
There's nothing like it. There's nothing like Fijians for that. You're right. They they have no poker face. You can just tell instantly what mood they're in.
Yes, and therefore how the game will go. Like, if you see them game, if you see the first thing that happens is like Brody takes it and goes down and gets smushed, then it's like, ooh, game
exactly.
on. But on the other hand, if 3 Fijians flounder and don't stick the tackle, or
the first kick is a kick of a restart is out in the full, those are the kind of things that just they have such a tell when they're not dialed in, and that'll be crucial. It'll be very curious to see that the first few minutes. How do they look?
Pay attention to the first 30 seconds, 2 minutes. 30 to 2 minutes of match time, and you'll probably know pretty well how it's going to go. So with that said, how's it going to go?
I don't know. I mean, the All Black team is phenomenal on paper. It's too good on paper. As good as the Fijian team is, I do foresee a little bit of, a little bit of a challenge. I think there'll be something for the All Blacks to figure out. As sharp as they were, they're not going to get 4 tries in 8 minutes. I don't think they're going to get close to that. I think Fiji will start well. A bit like Samoa did against the Maori. I would say it'll be like that kind of a game.
35-20.
To a higher level. Maybe they'll end up padding the score even more than that, just because they're that. If the All Blacks are sharp, they might pad it a little more than that. But
50,
somewhere
25.
around there. Something like that. 50-20, something like that. I think if the All Blacks are sharp, they'll end up with scores in the second half, especially with the likes of Whitelock coming on, Luke Jacobson coming on. Like, that could be telling. And to say nothing of D-Mac and Will Jordan. The back line.
Jordan. Tries coming off the bench.
No question about it. So from that point of view, I think Fiji likely will struggle. I expect both sides to get stuff off, but I do think Fiji will keep it interesting for a time anyway. But All Blacks to win by 20 plus.
I would say about the same. I'm hoping to take the under on it. I would love a tight game. I still think the All Blacks will win it, but I'm just excited to see Fiji. First time we're going to see Fiji in 2021. Second time we're going to see the All Blacks. First time against some opposition, I guess. So it's definitely exciting. They're two of my favourite teams in world rugby and international rugby. They both play just just beautiful brands of rugby, the pair of them. So there's just no way this won't be a good show of rugby. It just has to be.
Of course. That'll be a fun one. The celebration of Pacific Rugby continues, actually, in a crucial double header.
This is right.
Not that you'd know it given the squads involved, but Samoa are playing Tonga. This is also on the Saturday. It's actually an opener, a curtain raiser for that All Black match that we were just talking about. This is a World Cup qualifying match, as well as everything else. It's to be refereed by Ben O'Keefe. He's got James Dolman and Mike Fraser on the sidelines, and Brendan Pickerel as the TMO.
That's right.
So they've got an old Kiwi ticket for a match in Men's Smart Stadium, I should say, in Auckland. This will obviously be a good spectacle. It'll be a better matchup for both sides involved.
True.
And the two will meet again next week in Hamilton. And this is a double header to be decided by aggregate score for World Cup qualifiers. Which is interesting.
So winner goes through, and loser. There's still 2 avenues.
I have all that info here. So a win this weekend would just set up next weekend. It's based on aggregate scores, as we said, and then the winner of the series, I should say, it becomes Oceania 1 and is into Pool D in the World Cup.
So a place in France, a ticket to France is on the line over the next couple of weeks for these sides.
Indeed, they'll be starting their campaign against Americas 2 in Bordeaux, so not a bad one. Like, that's Canada / potentially Uruguay, probably Uruguay, or maybe even USA if Uruguay go and become America's 1.
Could do,
So it might be a USA game in there for Oceania 1. Not a bad carrot, but I think either way it's going to be interesting. For the loser, there are still 2 ways they can qualify. They end up they have a game against the Cook Islands, and if they win that, then they play the winner of the Asia competition featuring Hong Kong, Malaysia and
Korea.
South Korea, I think. Yeah, that's it. It's usually Hong Kong comes out of that one. So a game against Cook Islands and the game against Hong Kong, you'd honestly fancy the loser to make the World Cup anyway.
Either
so the
Tonga
stakes
or
aren't
Samoa.
that much. And even if they don't, if they just make the final of that Asia competition, they'll also get a place in the repechage if they lose. So there's a long, like, it's not like World Cup, like their World Cup fate is on the line here. It's just who makes it first. Which actually will have an effect on their November games, apparently.
It'll just be,
the winner of this apparently is in line to get like the better November games, the ones that are more expensive.
That's, that's definitely more, even more of a carrot, because as we were kind of highlighting, just the financial, the fiscal troubles of these island nations, and again, any kind of carrot like that will help. But the financial troubles have been pretty well charted. They came into the focus this week in the wake, really, of Tonga's thrashing at the hands of the All Blacks. That was really what kind of zeroed it in. You had guys like John Kerwin blowing up, calling out the whole system, man. You know, it was Japan are partly at fault, and the top 14 are at fault, and everyone's at fault, and the nations themselves and World Rugby, everyone's complicit, which is actually a point, because everyone is sort of complicit in the status quo, to be honest. Like there's rules to do with top tours guys releasing players, there's rules to do with Pacific Islanders signing to play in Japan if they're already capped. If they're capped, they won't get signed. If they're not capped and they can play for Japan, they will get signed. All of these are not good instant things that are kind of, you know, keeping the divide rather than narrowing it.
There's an element of truth to that. The Tongan national team isn't helped. A couple of changes are coming in. The likes of Piutau and Fekitoa, I believe, will be available come next year.
That's great. So they should be available yesterday. Like,
of course, but I think the Tonga situation was somewhat anomalous and contributed to by COVID in no small part.
Also true.
So there does need to be that.
Well, like Big Ben Tamifuna was in lockdown, isn't he? He's
that's why he wasn't involved.
One of their few like really, really good top level pros playing at the top level in France, and he's not available. He's a tight head as well.
He's back in actually. He's back in this week, crucially for this game, which is important.
It is important because this isn't a friendly, which the other one was. They can dust themselves. It was 102-0, but they can dust themselves down. It didn't matter a toss. This one does matter, and it contributes.
Actually, one of the issues as well around Ben Tamifuna is that he was having to pay for some of his quarantine costs, including a few lads who were coming in from Europe as well. So that is obviously that does dampen things, and actually to further dampen spirits, the team's kit van was actually stolen, but apparently it was empty. Such was the lack of resources they had anyway, so they didn't lose anything. But apart from the van itself, but issues in Tongan rugby definitely pretty grim at the moment as far as the finances are concerned, and one wishes someone would help them out. But as far as the game itself goes, we have the Samoa squad named, and it's by no means full strength, but it's fuller than Tonga. And they would be, in my mind, firm favourites. They've played some nice rugby. They've got some warm-ups. They have the likes of Asi Tuala in there, Stacey Ely, who I really like, and they'll be difference makers. Rodney Iona from 10 was looking very good in some of those moments. He was throwing nice passes. He has a good running game.
You can see by the charted improvement, the Maori Test 1, where they didn't register that many points and shipped a load. Maori Test 2, they shipped roughly the same amount of points and scored a lot more and were more competitive. They have had a more together squad for a couple of more weeks. They've had more adequate prep for a game like this. Like getting tonked by the All Blacks is not adequate prep for a big game against Samoa. It's not really. Didn't learn anything from it.
It isn't. Tongans, they do have a way of getting up for big games sometimes.
They certainly. Nothing quite motivates them like World Cup stuff.
It's true, and you wouldn't be ever able to trust Samoa. Like they're very good in moments. They're defensively game. They're as physical as anyone. They have the skills as good as any tier 2 team. But then sometimes it just falls apart, and then they just let it fall apart, and they give away penalties, and they give away cards, and they do all sorts of mad stuff that you wouldn't believe. So if they can match that Tongan physicality and just mind their discipline, then their extra quality should show and they should win the game. But that's by no means a guarantee.
No, it's not. If the Tongans can start getting 1 or 2 scrum penalties off them,
Big Ben can play as well as he was playing in the run-in for Bordeaux, where he was getting jackal steals, he was carrying well, tacking the scrums. If he can be a difference maker, who knows?
Yeah, no, it's definitely there's potential for that. For Tonga, it is about being the more physical. They are traditionally the biggest, most hefty of those hefty Islander folk. It's true. They're generally slightly slower than their neighbours, but they kind of they definitely have a bit more nous to them than Samoa. All of those Samoan shortcomings, you're dead right to zero in on, because it's just been a recurring theme for decades. Like, they'll be a really good team and inexplicably play terribly. Like, whereas Tonga will be under the radar a lot of the time, will come into a World Cup untouted and then go on and nearly beat Scotland or someone.
The last World Cup, they were one of the finer two-tier teams on show. They just managed to get it right. And sometimes they do manage to get it right, but obviously they are tremendously depleted, and it is going against them.
Yeah.
They'll be hurting from last week, though, and they could yet be dangerous if they can stick some stuff together and get themselves right, but they'll obviously need to defend better, and I think they'll need to make the pace of the game slower, like force some knock-ons, kick the ball deep, try not to kick in field.
Starting slow is good news for Tonga.
Yeah, they were slow on the turn.
Skelter quick is just
they were so slow on the turn against the All Blacks.
The line speed, if you can call it such, was just, it was not.
There was one try in particular when the All Blacks took a quick throw, and the Tongan lad who was playing,
it was Geordie Barrett's try, wasn't he? Did he dot it down?
I'm not sure who dotted it down. There were so many, I can't quite remember. They all just
trotted in PlayStation formation.
It was the number 8 Tui Pilatu in particular who was just driving me crazy, because he there was a quick throw came in and he was facing the touchline, but he just started walking towards the touchline, but the play was going on behind him, and I don't know what he thought, but he noticed way too late that the play was going on, and he turned around as the All Blacks were trotting through the space he was in before he was just walking away from it, and it was just crazy to watch the dialed outness and the slowness of the Tongan defence at times. I mean, they were kind of punch drunk.
They were
from all of the All Black stuff that was happening.
That's true too.
But it was still they need to sharpen up, but they are quite slow on the turn, and they need the game to be slow and ugly.
You feel a bit like an impotent boxing coach just shouting head movement in at your guy after he's like in round 4, just like, my head's only moving because he's hitting it, so I agree that the Tongans do have inroads here. They won't, like, it's not the All Blacks, it's Samoa.
No,
there's
and
definitely ways
these two
to
play
win.
each other often enough as well. They know how to get one over on each other.
They do. They have a intimate understanding of each other's game, and they know how to get under each other's skin. And Samoa are more easily tilted. All of that's true.
Yeah.
I still think Samoa have had the better prep for this one. And I would make them firm.
And they have the better rugby players on the pitch, which would not necessarily be true if they both had full squads, but is true of the two squads they have. So I'm backing Samoa to win it pretty comfortably. Probably 35-20, say some similar kind of score. Now, you know what? That's wrong. These two, when they play each other, you think it's going to be all razzle dazzle. It rarely is. I'm going to scratch that and say 22-10 to Samoa.
That sounds a bit more that's where my head was at. It's like, because I remember we watched that mud game that they played.
That's right, which was a great game.
It was a great game, but it was so low scoring, so bitty and nitty gritty. It becomes a bit like an interpro, like watching Leinster Munster or something. These two absolutely scrapping it out. Totally. So I do expect a 2-score game, but maybe like an 8 to 12 point margin in favour of Samoa. And some loose moments, some good moments, some really good rugby, some really terrible rugby, all of that stuff, all rolled into one. But it should be a fun 2-match series, and as we say, a little carrot at the end of it. The winner of these next 2 games, we'll know, will be at the World Cup. We'll be able to chalk one of the Oceania ones off, and
that's it.
Start filling in the gaps in that World Cup setup.
So we have a qualifier, that's right, in a week's time. But yes, moving on from that game, we also have a game which is, at least on paper, a bit of a humdinger.
Truly.
We have Grand Slam champions Wales up against All Black conquering Argentina. This is going on in the Principality Stadium on Saturday at 1 p.m. local time, so an early kickoff.
That's right.
Matt Carley taking the game with Luke Pearce and Carl Dixon assistant referees, and Claire Hodnett, who's taken her second ever test game from the TMO after Ireland-Japan last week, so an all English refereeing team. And this is actually this is a very, very interesting game on paper between the thing that jumps out at me is the best defense in the world last year, near enough, against one of the best offenses in the world in the Six Nations this year, when Wales just lit it up and scored tries from everywhere. And I just think from a matchup point of view, I'm very, very intrigued to see how that goes.
I'm absolutely excited to see how that goes. It's a game that on paper is exciting all throughout the years, and yet you haven't seen that much of them. It's a weird history. I was looking up. The first match between the two of them took place in '68. But they played a 2-match series as part of a Wales tour. However, only Argentina awarded full caps for that one. Wales didn't. Argentina won the first game 9-5, and the second was drawn 9-all in that one. And then they met again in Cardiff in '76, which Wales won 2019. but that wasn't capped either. Their first capped game happened in 1991 in the pool stage of the World Cup, and Wales won that 16-7. And since then they've only met 18 times.
Yeah,
which is quite a I would have thought more. I would have really thought they'd have met more often. Wales currently hold the upper hand with 13 wins to Argentina's 5.
What we would give for such a record against the Pumas.
I know, right? Yeah, another really good fixture on paper, but it's just one that we don't quite see as often. One moment that I do remember is the 99 World Cup, one of the most famous rugby brawls of all time, just before we shifted to professionalism. It started on the pitch, ended in the dugout, there were eye gouges, blood everywhere. It was just an absolute riot on the pitch between these two.
I don't expect that.
No, I don't expect it on this occasion. Their last meeting more recently was in 2018. Wales won a 2-match series. You may remember it, down in Argentina. Their first test 23-10 and the second one 30-12. That was a different time though, 2018. It's a while ago. Very different Argentina team, very different Wales team. That was an Argentina
team that was kind of fading a little, I think, towards the tail end of that. It was a weird time. They had the 2015 World Cup, they were great, but just as they were building for that 2019 World Cup, they tapered off a little.
It's true.
And they still haven't really, truly reinvented themselves from attack. Well, they did reinvent themselves last year, but they haven't found themselves on attack that much since then. We do have the 2 squads.
We do,
mercifully, which is great to see. Wales obviously depleted without their Lions, but they have a decent team on paper. They've got Jonathan Davis, I believe, captaining.
Yeah.
But to start with the pack, they've got Nicky Smith, Elliot Dee, Dylan Lewis, Ben Carter, who was man of the match last week, Will Rowlands, who grabbed a try, Ross Moriarty, James Botham, who played very well, Wainwright then at 8. And then in the back line, Hardy and Sheedy should drive that nice pace. They've got Davis and Halaholo, which is a lovely centre partnership on paper, with Nick Tompkins on the bench to come in as well. And then they've got Owen Lane, Jonah Holmes, who bagged some meat last week, and they've gone with Hallam-Amos at 15 over the potential Nick Tompkins option. Yeah. But it's a lovely team. They're obviously shorn of many of their men.
It's true. It kind of seems to me they've balanced their cap dispersion, because it is a young team, but with some crucial bits of experience throughout. You have obviously the most experience is Jay Davis by quite a distance. He has 89 test caps. And then the next closest is Moriarty with 46 at 6. Himself and Wainwright in the back row, 46 and 30 caps. And then in the front row is where they have most of them. It's Smith with 40, D with 38, and Lewis 29.
Most of them off the bench though.
Most of them off the bench, and then the only other one is I think Amos with 23 in the back line. But then beyond that, you're looking at single figures. Sheedy 10 caps so far, one of the relative experienced of all those young charges. Hardy Sheedy, a very exciting young halfback combination, 15 caps between them.
Yeah, no, it's a team that's made to move the ball. It's a team that's leaning into what they were good at.
Yeah.
That's why I like Halaholo out there. I like having the fast guys out there. They've gone for Hallam-Amos at 15 as a winger, just to put pace in the team. Yeah. To keep the tempo going and keep everything high.
What they suspect might be a jet lagged and raggedy Argentina side around Principality Stadium all day.
I mean, you were talking about experience. You contrast that with what the Pumas got going. On paper, this could be a big away win. You've got Tetas Chaparro, Montoya, and Gomez Cadea in the front row. That is a monstrous scrummaging unit up against a Welsh trio who don't have a faultless record as far as their scrummaging is concerned. Guido Petty and Marcus Kramer is gritty and mean in the lock partnership.
Favoured over the slightly more dodge Lavanini Kramer combo that we saw in Romania.
They've got Matera, Facundo Issa, Rodrigo Bruni, who bagged a try last week.
That's awesome back row.
Really, really good.
Yeah.
Then they got Cabelli and Sanchez in the form of his life last year. De La Fuente and Moroni in the centres, stalwarts galore, and then Carreras, Cordero, and Juan Cruz Malia making up the back three.
Brand new back three, actually. Last week, Boffelli and Imov started in Romania last week, and obviously have shouldered some of the blame for what happened down there, because they are out of the 23.
Imov has been only just coming back from injury, hasn't he? So he's still all class in my book. But I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that we've seen this Pumas before, they had that dodgy game against Romania, where sometimes when they're touring Europe and they haven't been settled together in camp,
Yeah.
they just look a shadow of themselves.
It's true.
And it does happen.
Guys like Kramer looking bang average
Yeah,
against
dropping
Romania,
balls and not winning
whereas you see him
contacts.
against the All Blacks.
Yeah.
Roll back the clock, like, what is it?
A few months, 6 months, 8 months
ago,
yeah.
I guess, and he was just dominating the All Black pack, and you're like, whoa, is that the same guy?
Yeah,
but sure, we know
crazy.
this. We've seen it a lot. Ireland play Argentina a lot. And we get a lot of false confidence from our November beatings of Argentina, where it's like, oh, Argentina, we're better than Argentina, right? And it's like,
we always beat them until it
the
matters.
World Cup, when it matters,
Yeah,
you know. Like,
but yeah, like that. This is part of the reason why I would give Wales the edge, is just because Argentina looked dialed out last week. But on paper, I think you have to say that Argentina have their first choice players, and they beat the All Blacks last year. They should be here to give Wales a right good go.
Yeah.
Looking at the game just from the point of view of each team, we'll start obviously with Wales.
Yeah.
Like it for me, like we talked galore about them in the Six Nations, but it was all about that sort of red zone efficiency, finding tries, and it doesn't matter.
Spending 2 minutes in the red zone in the first 2 games and grabbing try after try after try.
They've picked a team to do that. They still have Hardy, who was in his one game he played arguably their best scrummy at the Six Nations, with Sheedy, who started most of those games, and Halaholo and Davis. They like, it's a team built to move the ball, and it doesn't matter what the game looks like on paper if Wales can get on top of that Argentina defence, find the necessary offloads, stretch the field, and punish them for being narrow, and like nobody did to Argentina.
It's true.
Like, I started last year loving Argentina, but by the end of it I kind of hated them, and I wanted someone to get after them.
You weren't alone in that.
And yeah, well, indeed, there was, but no, that's putting political reasons aside. Yeah. But I just, like, they were so defensive and they did nothing on offense, and everyone was just a bit clunky last year. It was one of the worst years for offensive rugby you'd ever see. Yeah. But nobody quite managed to put together the game to get outside them and really put a score on them and end that sort of defensive dominance that they were bringing. Perhaps Wales is the team, especially if they're a little dialed out, but they've brought lovely passers of a ball. They need to get to the extremities and get outside that narrow tigerish blitz with depth, and whether it's a crossfield kick or whatever it is, just get outside that edge defence and then punish them, find tries like only Wales can.
Like only Wales can. Well, they scored 68, albeit against a slightly porous Canadian team last week. But, quite porous. The tempo is just the key to their approach, and they picked, as you say, the halfbacks to do it. They will try and move them around. It's going to be a big job for guys like Carter Rowlands in the second row. I know Carter was man of the match on debut. We were touting him, great showing. Rowlands has been earned his place through really good form over the last couple of years with Wasps, and he is a big unit. They will be far busier this week. Even a dialed out Argentina are physical in the tight and will try and hit you. It's a big job for the
They got to get outside them. They got to link up. You got to have those little tip-on passes. James Botham's got to be involved in that department.
Absolutely.
They've got to keep the pace of the game high and get the offload game going.
This is it. Well, they need to make it their kind of game. Like their back row. It's quite a young back row, but they will have to be busy and hustling and just keeping that tempo high all game, because I think they are at a deficit as far as just size and physicality and heft to those monstrous Argentinians, but they have the advantage as far as speed and probably fitness and just kind of urgency, which is something that you very often see is lacking from Argentinian touring teams. So making it a high tempo, high octane affair, even a high scoring shootout, will favour Wales. If they get dragged into a kind of a laboured game, a more physical arm wrestle, then this young Welsh side, they will be fine. That's not where they want to be in those trenches. They want to grab a couple of clean tries early and just get some daylight and cruise from there, and that's what they've done very well.
It is, and like the red zone efficiency has to continue, but they do have to be mindful of some of these Argentine guys, in particular the Jackal of Matera. Like they do need someone to target him.
It could be both of them. It could, whoever it is will need to mind the pill, because it's lovely the way they move the ball. It's lovely the way they clear rucks in an instant. Ideally, no second rucks gone. But you have to accept the fact that there might be a Matera there once or twice, and you need to get him out of there, because if it starts yielding penalties, if the breakdown gets a little loose, and those it's not just Matera. Bruni will get over the ball, Issa will get over the ball, Kramer will get over the ball, Petty will steal the ball on you, Montoya, the whole pack will take a Jackal if it lands at their feet, and sometimes Wales can get a little bit.
You got to keep it to the back line. You got to attack the back line.
A ruck avoidance strategy, if at all possible. You can pop it up to the halfback and keep it going. Do so.
And the other question is about Sheedy's leadership as well. He's been playing nothing but flowy footy for Bristol and Wales. if Argentina get in their face, if that defence is styling them, does he have the capacity to take charge, to change the game, to pin them back,
to go toe to toe with a guy like Sanchez in a kicking game, you know?
Yeah. Well,
I would give Sanchez the edge in an out and out territory battle. So it depends what Argentina we see, obviously, but yeah, that is a question that remains unanswered about Sheedy. He's a lovely player to watch in flow, but it's when the tempo is disrupted, can he dig them out?
Yeah, and as much as we tout Wales, that the Pumas could be the team to put that pressure on them. You know, maybe it's a case where they knock cobwebs off against Romania.
Maybe so.
They did still beat the All Blacks last year.
That's it. You can't write away that for ignominiously tight win over Romania aside. They did beat the All Blacks last year, like less than 12 months ago. So it's like,
more than can be said for Wales. You know, they haven't beaten the All Blacks in a long old while, and they did it with defence. I mean, their silky attacking shape is something that they will need to find again.
They do, and they might not find it this week. They grabbed a couple of nice tries against Romania that were encouraging, and Cordero's back in the mix for them, and like they have such stocks in those backline. Like they dropped Imov and Buffelli for this week. Just drop them, you know, out of the squad because they were annoying them, and then they bring in guys who are really, really good in their stead. So it makes very little sense that they aren't as expansive or that they weren't as expansive. I think you're right to say that the game has moved on in even those 8 months or 6 months since that time. You can't really get away with being that one-dimensional side. Wales are more attacking oriented. They will obviously have to lean on their defence. You can't cast it aside. You don't need to either be one thing or the other.
No, they have to.
But keeping that defence, trying to repel that awesome, the most clinical, most effective offence in the Six Nations this year, which was Wales, trying to match that with the most brutal defence in the Southern Hemisphere in the Tri-Nations last year, which was the Pumas. It's a wonderfully colourful matchup. Can Argentina manage to repel them or even contain them to a few scores and then find some of their own, which they will need to work. That is a big work on for them just from last year and even from the World Cup as well. Like they haven't been their silky selves. They haven't really found under Ledesma. They haven't found what their attacking tempo is. They don't quite know what speed they want to play at, and they just find it very difficult to unpick defences. They've
been about set piece and kicking game and defence, and I think they could ride that wave pretty far if it goes their way. If they can get on top of the Welsh, if they can get out of the line and be disciplined but also effective in terms of just shutting down that what is going to be somewhat disjointed. You know, they don't have the amount of players they don't have now with Navidi gone as well, and Beard is colossal, and they don't really have the distribution option from lock as much as they would have with a Beard in there or Alan Wynne-Jones in there. So there is a chance if they can get out of the line as they did against the All Blacks to just chop, tackle, disrupt, jackal, get on top of them. There is a very good chance that they can get on top in the scrum with that front row they picked. Their maul could be good. All of these things that they did well over the last 12 months, married with the kicking game from Cabelli and Sanchez, could just pin Wales back. Wales weren't the cleanest team at exiting in the Six Nations, so they could plot their way around the pitch and play a very disruptive physical game. But without just that little top 2 inches on offence, I think they will ultimately fall foul to just that one Welsh chance that does end up in a try if they can't press home the advantage that they might well build for themselves with a class forward pack and halfback
true.
pairing.
On paper they look very, very good. That being said, what do you expect to see from them?
Indeed. They'll have to bring the same kind of ferocity that they brought last autumn. It'll have to be the same energy. Like there were such... They had that crowd. They had the jumping up and down. They were beating their chests after every play. It was emotional.
They had a base camp.
Yeah, exactly.
They were in Australia for 4 weeks before playing a game.
It's true. Yeah, that's
opposed to being in Romania one week and Wales the next, and then flopping around and all this. Like they never perform as well when they're jumping around, and they never perform as well in summer or
so I guess you're saying Wales.
I'm leaning towards a Wales win, so I am. A home win for the Six Nations champs is what I think, and a slightly underwhelming Argentinian showing despite the calibre of the players that they have. Do you know what it reminds me? It reminds me of whenever I read the Montpellier team sheet the week of Leinster v Montpellier, and I start thinking, oh my god, these guys are
Bismarck,
scary.
Duplessis,
Bismarck, look at it, Surfing, oh my god, these guys are class. And then you look at them on the pitch scoring 3 and shipping 50, and you're like, wait a minute, what? And they all look fat and disinterested, and it's just like, okay. I expect
Shane's long-standing hatred of Montpellier goes on, and he'll get that cheap shot in every
time. It's until Leinster stop drawing them.
Until Montpellier just stop. Didn't they win the Challenge Cup this year? Get off their backs.
No.
They're champions.
They are champions this year. No, to be fair, they were better this year. To be fair, that is undoubtedly
get
true.
off their backs.
No, but they remind me of that kind of team where, like, on paper, I'm reading the Argentinian team. I'm like, that's a better team than the Wales team. It's just on paper, it's better.
But is it better if it doesn't score as many tries?
No.
That's the philosophical question. Are you truly better if you dominate every area and don't score the tries? This is why everyone thought Wales were worse than the teams they were beating.
Yes.
It's because they were losing certain areas and
is a Northern Hemisphere
tries.
narrative that is wrong-headed.
Yeah.
It's the same. You can see it in the football where they're talking about, like, the team in possession is like, oh, they're dominating the game. They have, like, 60% possession. It's like, they haven't scored.
Yeah.
They're playing terribly. They have no pace. They're not doing anything.
Exactly.
It's like, that's not dangerous.
It's
not anything at all. Scores count. The rest is all gibberish. You know, like Ireland. Oh, jeez, like the amount we talk about that in Ireland is like, oh, we played a good pressure game. We had 60% possession, 60% territory. We scored 16 points.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
that's
like,
it. Wales score points. And
for
for that reason, you would give them the edge. I suppose I give them the edge as well, but I do think that if Argentina show up, they could win.
I agree with that.
If they show up, they could win. So
if they show up at all, I think they should win because I think they're on paper a more experienced, better side.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily think that that's what I'm expecting to happen.
I think I probably agree with you, but I definitely accept the possibility of a Pumas win here, and it'll definitely be an interesting watch. I'm looking forward to seeing it Saturday at 1 p.m.
1 p.m. Saturday, a nice curtain raiser for the weekend's action anyway, and it's just two exciting teams and a game, as we said, that we don't see as often as we might.
Yeah.
So enjoy it.
Looking forward to that one. We're going to move on now and just touch on another game that's going on between England and Canada in Twickenham.
That's right.
Also on Saturday, 3:00 kickoff. Craig Evans taking the game from Welsh Rugby Union, Pierre Brousset and Chris Busby from France and Ireland respectively as assistant refs, and Ben Whitehouse seems to have moved permanently to the TMO
he's
box.
Found himself a new home in the TMO. I've quite liked his TMO calls, to be honest. He's pretty blunt, he's abrupt.
I think he's jaded by his experience as a ref dealing with terrible TMOs, and hence wants to not be that guy who's too slow and everything.
I agree with it. I thought he had some slightly irksome tendencies as a ref. Like, he can be a bit prickly, he can be a bit like kind of matter of fact,
unnecessarily kind of trying to be the school teacher guy, which sometimes, like, it's good to see, but sometimes refs lean into it too much.
It becomes off as a little bit callous and a little bit flippant, and it can vex you listening to it. But as a TMO, he's succinct, and I love that. Sometimes he doesn't even queue up the replay. He just be like, go for it.
That's fine,
if
mate.
The ref says something that is like, that's what happened, go for it. Just speed, which is what we all are looking for from these TMO decisions. It's like, yes, we all want to see the right decision reached, but we don't necessarily want the game to stop for 5 minutes so that we can get there, you know.
And the reason that we've been talking about the TMO is because this match is a bit of a mismatch on paper, I'm afraid. It's just one of those matches.
Got to find some intrigue somewhere.
There isn't too much to say beyond the blindingly obvious, which is that England are strong favourites in Twickenham.
I would make them slight favourites already.
Strong favourites, I would say. We have an England team that's full of excitement. Alex Dombrandt is set to make his debut, and not a minute too soon. Awesome player at number 8. Marcus Smith and Randall get to go again.
Smith and Randall axis that could be terrifying for many years to come.
Could be. The young charges at halfback are class. Adam Radbourne of Newcastle gets his first cap on the wing.
That's good. More new caps. Eddie Jones doling out the caps. Love it.
It's been a good summer already for them in that department, and just the talent that they're breeding over there and the quality of rugby in the Premiership. I'm a little bit jealous, and I'm a little bit worried for the years to come, because England rugby looks in a good place.
It does.
I think they're going to start off start on their merry way, these debutants, with a big win over Canada, where they'll look to get physically on top of them, press home their advantage, and score some lovely tries with some wide passing. I love the Premiership.
But what'll England try to do?
That's what England will do.
Oh, right. I thought you were talking about Canada, man.
No.
You're going to bully them at scrum time and get their maul going. No.
What maul? They do have a team, though, Rugby Canada, and that's worth mentioning. They announced it in the not too distant past. So we have I'm trying to get them on Twitter here. So they have announced their team. Connor Keys in there at lock. It's the usual crack. There's not a huge
not
amount
much
of
change.
Not much change, and not much to write home about.
Peter Nelson still at 10.
Peter Nelson still in there at 10. Cooper Coates at 15 has a nice name, but these are mostly unknown lads from Canada.
Yeah, I know Peter Nelson. Nelson will likely be kicking an ill-advised 3 at some point in the first quarter. But yeah, no, to be honest, Canada, I'm a bit jaded with Canada just because of their World Cup showing. I thought they were really, really bad.
I think they've been on a downward spiral for years. It's arguably on a faster trajectory than Romania's. Like Romania, everyone talks about being down and out, but they're still physical and they're still defensive. Some teams are just progressing quicker than they are.
Yeah.
But Canada seem to be regressing, and they're definitely.
They used to be one of the more one of a powerhouse of the tier 2 nations. They used to be at every World Cup, and they used to be pretty physical. You think of some of the calibre of players. What's your man's name? Big Lock. Cudmore. Yeah. They have nothing the like of Jamie Cudmore in that team.
No.
Right there. Not even close, like, to the calibre of player that he was. Tom Couture's stalwart for so many years. Yeah, they've gone in full regression mode, and like.
They can still throw passes. I'll say that for them.
The one bit of positivity is that try they scored, the opening try of the game against Wales last week, which was a tap and go, 3 passes flashed from one side of the pitch to the other, and a well taken try. That's great to see. They do still have some good ball playing moments in it. They do try and pass the ball. They they probably try and play more rugby than the US do sometimes in terms of their ethos.
That's going to change.
That's going to change, we hope. But
listen,
just in terms of the calibre of player that they're producing at the moment, it's not as good.
But hopefully the MLR bump will come to Canada as well in due course, and we can hope in the meantime that they poach a nice try or two in Twickenham. Yeah. But an upset win against the English is not really a reasonable request to the gods of rugby.
No.
It'll be a fun game.
Can I make the same request I make of Italy?
No,
just
3-pointers.
Kick that 3-pointer.
Oh, why not? It's better to score 3 than 0.
No, it's not. That's my point. It's not better. It's the same.
Yeah.
It's the exact same.
I guess.
Try and get a try. Get a try.
Yeah.
Look how good the US felt when they got 3 whole tries in the second half.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, definitely getting to 20 is like a good benchmark for any tier 2 team. Even if you're going to concede 70, getting to 20 is nice.
Because getting to 20, it seems far fetched, and it certainly is far fetched if you're going to kick 3 with your first penalty. Because then
you need 6 more of them.
You're just never going to get there. But if you only need 3 chances, 3 chances in a game to turn into 7-pointers, then you can get to 20.
Who knows?
That's what I would ask of them. It's what I ask of Italy in every game in the Six Nations. It's what I always ask of a tier 2 side, or just an overwhelming underdog like Canada going to Twickenham. I
didn't mind Georgia's 3-pointers against the Springboks. I think there's context as well as everything else.
That's true.
But that said, we're going to move on to the next game that's going on.
Next up, we have our own charges again. Ireland playing host to the USA in the Aviva Stadium. That's going to be Saturday as well, July 10th. Kickoff 7:15, so an evening kickoff for this one. It's going to be refed by Mathieu Reynal from France, obviously, with Adam Jones and Craig Evans of Wales on the touchline, and Eric Gauzin, another Frenchman in the TMO. So 2 French, 2 Welsh in the refereeing team for this one. It's another interesting game. Ireland will be definitely looking to get a few kind of fringe players into some test jerseys, get some new caps in there, which Farrell has been talking up.
Yeah, a bit like England, just trying to stretch.
Similar. Yeah, it's that kind of tour for them, Lions tour going on. That is kind of the equation for a lot of these teams in the wake of their Lions being away. It'd be nice to see them kind of gel and be cohesive, marry that power game that they're comfortable with some speed, some intellect. You'd like to see them be the cleverer team than the US, and certainly the more experienced team.
I think Ireland will be excited to take a look at some of their young men, but very keen to get a comfortable win here against the USA. It's another tier 1 v tier 2, and a loss at home is unacceptable and not something that they should be hoping to entertain at any point during the 80 minutes. However, the US, the Eagles, they will take major encouragement from their showing in Twickenham. Outside of a rust-filled first half, they actually won the game. They were 26-3 down at the second half. Ended up only losing the game by 14, a 26-17 win in the second half.
You never see the like of it from a tier 2 side in Twickenham away from home.
Winning the second half,
absolutely fantastic.
By 9 points,
and they have some confidence here. The last time they were here,
they got some tries.
Taufete'e got a double when he was in Dublin last, so he'll have positive memories as well.
Although he did end up taking a 6-month injury towards the end of that game, if you recall.
So
he
some negative memories as well.
So
maybe
it was an eventful time in Dublin.
PTSD or just fun memories. I don't know. But it's definitely a good challenge for both.
They'll be looking to make a game of this, the US. After last week, fancying it against England, Ireland don't have the same depth as England, so an Ireland B team is more vulnerable naturally than an England B team would be, and they're gonna go for this. I'd say they'll be keen to make a game of it for sure. As far as the squads are concerned, Ireland have named their team. They've gone for 8 uncapped players in the 23. They got Kilcoyne, Kelleher and Tom O'Toole, who's a debutant in a tight head. They got Baird and Ryan in the locks, that's very fine.
Awesome.
They got Daragh at 6, Coombs at 8, and Nick Timoney comes in for a first cap in the 7 shirt, which is a little out of position for him. It's really 3 number 8s in the back row, but
is, yeah.
very explosive carrying nonetheless. And that's what they were best at last week. It is what they're best at, and I don't mind them leaning into it. If those 3 can link off each other and generate some explosive carries,
it'll some of those centres as well and just get a little wider. It can cause some problems in the tram lines. That'd be nice to see.
100%. As far as the back line is concerned, I mean, Craig Casey and Joey Carberry is the partnership we all want to see work at 9 and 10.
Haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
In theory, it's the Munster pairing, but sure, Conor Murray and Carberry start, and then Carberry doesn't touch the ball for 60 minutes and gets hauled off, and then Casey only comes on at 77 minutes.
Yeah, that is his traditional. The man has more 3-minute showings than anyone before. Like, for a guy with such hype around him, the coaches don't trust him off the bench, Craig Casey, which is curious. So I'm delighted for him to get a start, because he does have bundles of potential and potentially could be a really good option for this Irish team. It's an all Ulster centre partnership outside them. James Hume comes in for a first cap to partner Stuart McCluskey in the centre, which is exciting. And then in the outside backs, we have another debutant in Balakoon on the right wing.
He has been awesome all season. It's good to see him finally get a look in at
It is, and a great opportunity for him as well, because his 2 partners in the back 3 are full of experience. Hugo Keenan, I know he's a young man, but very experienced and solid at this level, and Conway on the other side. I mean, between the 2 of them, they'll cover the backfield no problem. So Balakoon's like the pressure,
and Carberry will probably be dropping back there on D as well. So
the pressures of the right wing position won't be on him on debut. I think it'll be more about just go out and express yourself, find some tries. You've got some good solid heads around you. So
typically when it goes well against these tier 2 sides, then your winger on debut should be scoring.
Yes.
That's why that should be a good little work on for Ireland. If they can get Balakoon on the board, then it'll probably have been a good day for all involved.
Indeed.
It's normally a good little litmus test. Are both wingers on the board against this team that you should be beating?
Yeah, absolutely. And the US have gone for a few changes from their team. It's not bad. Like it really isn't. David Ainuu from Toulouse is in at loosehead. Joe Tefatae comes in at hooker, having come off the bench against England. He's class. Paul Mullen retains his jersey in the tight head. Peterson and Savetta in the locks. Then they've got Germishois and Hatting and Cam Dolan in the back row. Cam Dolan in particular. Germishois is a fine player as well. He's coming into the squad as flanker.
Cam Dolan has been Captain America really for them, hasn't he? He's
awesome player, and he will be the Captain of America if he's de facto captain at the moment. I know Bryce Campbell has the armband, as it were, but I definitely think Dolan is a future captain. He's got a written all over
leader. He jumps in the lineouts, he steals lineouts.
His carry game, his offload game, his tackling game. He's just one of those back row playmakers, of whom there are many, and he's rangy in class and found a try at the weekend, and he will be vital to their chances this week. They've stuck with Ruben De Haas against my advice at 9, but he's there and hopefully he has a good show of it. Luke Carty gets to line up against his home country.
That's a funny one.
At 10,
You have Mullen and Carty going up against the Irish. What's going on?
Yeah, and Adge McGinty's injured. That's the only reason we're not seeing him as well. They've got Campbell and Whiting in the centres. Whiting, I don't think, was in the squad last week, but he's in this week. Mm-hmm. And then they've got Christian Dyer coming back in on the wing with Cruz on the other wing. Cruz obviously was very nice last week, and Mikey Teo, as he did during the match last week, shifting into fullback to link up with Cruz, his Utah friend.
Yeah, well, sure. Cruz scored a try off the bench on debut last week. Didn't
that was Dyer.
Dyer, even. Sorry, So fair play to him, and getting the start based on that, and it's another 6-2 split. I notice on the bench for them. They are physical. We know that the US like to be strong, but sometimes you can rue that if a back goes down.
They've got just Baska at covering scrum half and McGee. But the thing about both of those men is that they're both kind of utility backs. Baska's a scrum
quite
half,
a rangy guy. He's quite
he
big.
could slot in the back line, and so could McGee. McGee can play anywhere, so there is that element to it where they have taken down the risk somewhat.
Sure.
But there are a couple of interesting squads. Obviously, starting just with Ireland in terms of how we want to look at this game. For me, like what I'm going to be looking at, obviously I don't take the US for granted, and this is a sloppy team, so first and foremost you want to win.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I am looking to see how they play. Can they stretch the field? Can the 10 be a little more involved? Can Craig Casey as a young 9 replicate that kind of passing that Gibson Park had? And just generally, are they going to have decent quality passing, and then to marry that with the good running and supporting game and the good little link plays from the back row forwards? Like, can the passing be as sharp as we need it to be if we're going to evolve? I mean, we have good little plays, good link plays. It was nice to see us work that screen in with Keenan. We're getting to the extremities. I love our back rows. I think the loose forwards in general, like I would count Kelleher sometimes as a loose forward.
Even though he's,
Ryan Baird, like the loose forward carryings is a great strength of ours, but I would just love to see us marry the killer pass with that. Like it's something Sexton has that none of our other 10s have. And really, I'm looking at Joey Carberry and saying, can you deliver on that sort of quality passing to open up a defense? Because he didn't
last week. He had the opportunity to throw a couple of potential try assists and just didn't throw them. Didn't even throw them. And the one time he did throw one, he got picked. So it's like, that's the concern. That's the concern. Is just the quality of passing of Ireland for the last decade really has not been anything to write home about.
It's gone.
It's gone down.
It was like slowly going down, and then O'Driscoll retired and went. And listen,
much.
We won games without it, but we kind of were found out then, and we do need now to expand.
There's no world in which you get past a World Cup quarterfinal, which is ultimately what it's all about for Ireland.
It's all about.
There's no way you can do that by being clunky and not able to pass. Like you have to be able to.
I actually think as well, and I've made this point before on the podcast, but it's always in the back of my head about Ireland, is that our time scale is slightly different from other teams because like we are still an emotionally brittle side at the best of times somewhat, and we have a summer tour this time next year in New Zealand, 3 tests in New Zealand, which I don't think COVID will save us from. And if they go into that series a year out from the World Cup and are clunky and are found out and lose badly, it's not the same as losing all 3 tests necessarily. You can lose all 3 tests and have lots to take from it, but if they get outclassed and blown away and are left rudderless and trying to find themselves and pick up the pieces a year out from the World Cup, I think that's a very, very bad place for us to be in. And so in the back of my mind, I feel like that is a huge seminal tour for this group that will ultimately go to the World Cup in 2023, and hence things need to be got right in advance of that.
Yeah, indeed, and this is a perfect little kind of test for that. It's obviously no kind of challenge like a 3-test tour of the All Blacks, but it is hosting a team on the up after a good showing last year or last week even, a physical side who can cause us problems because they're more than comfortable in a slow bludgeoning game. And if Ireland are a bit complacent in doing that, because going to type is us going up the jumper and kind of hitting them hard. And guys like Cam Dolan will chop them all day long.
The US will be physical, and if Ireland can get repelled, like what their answer to that is, if that's just a kick into the air, they could find themselves in a frustrating game. That said, I think what they want to do is maybe isolate the likes of Teo, who's a phenomenal player going forward, but isn't that great in the air.
On the turn.
I think they will try and kick the ball from midfield and put pressure on these guys, get Keenan chasing after the ball, get McCluskey chasing after the ball, get Conway chasing after the ball and put hits in and disrupt them, and then win attacking opportunities in the red zone and turn them into tries. And to be fair, last week they were great at turning red zone opportunities into tries, and that's what won them the game.
That is true. Their line out set piece launch play has improved no end under Paul O'Connell this year, which we were talking about all during the Six Nations. It's always a fulcrum for any good Irish team, even that O'Driscoll team. Like that line out was what they launched from more often than not. That's like it's a pivotal part of Irish rugby, and it needs to go well. But I still am going to cite I hate kicking off first phase off a strike play, be it off line out. I think in the middle third especially, I would love to see us with a bit more ambition. We're against a tier 2 side here. Put the ball through the hands, for God's sake. It's easier there's more space to attack when you're in the middle of the field than there is in the 22. Like, if you want to try and work on your passing game, if you want to try and reach the extremities, which we do, if you want to try and work in kick return transition play, which we do, if we vitally need to do that, these are the kinds of games where you can afford to do that a bit more. I expect to see them try it for a phase, especially off transition. If they turn the ball over, if they win a box kick, I expect them to flash the ball to the other side to try and get to those open areas and find scores. I do. They did it last week. That's how they got McCluskey's try. That's true.
And they have those back rowers on the wings. I expect to see Daragh a little wider with Coombs in tighter this week. I expect that to be an adjustment, and we'll see Darragh's hands come into full flow in those wide channels. That's going to be exciting to see, but I do expect them to probe and try it. But yes, if it stalls after a phase and they're in the middle of the field, they'll go to the kick, and they will. That's what they do. Yeah, I know. I know. No, it's not quite the same as kicking off first phase. Like, if it stalls, you do kick it. I understand that. I
I do resent the fact that we kick as much ball as we do. I think we kick away perfectly good ball far too often, and I really, really, really don't want to see us get a turnover and immediately drop it on the toe, which we do often.
Yeah, it's true.
I would much rather see us throw a speculative 40-yard ropey pass. I think that's a better instinct than to drop it on the toe, honestly.
No, I agree. I think it's also a killer when we break the line sometimes. Especially, it's the Stockdale syndrome, because Stockdale has used it to such great effect. But now every time an Irishman makes a line break in the wide channels, they drop it on the toe. Yeah. And if the defence reads it well, the chance is just gone. Yeah. You'd sooner see them take it to the phases, keep the ball quick, go again. Mm-hmm. I do think that the forward battle is where Ireland might look to press home their advantage.
It was the case all through the Six Nations. It's where
they're super dynamic. I mean, Kelleher, Baird, James Ryan, Gavin Coombs coming into this team, immensely physical in the tight areas, and if they can just beat their opposite man, if they can get Cam Dolan going backwards, get on top of them, get them bruised, get them bloodied, that's where they're going to look to win the game,
which
really.
is
and
possible,
then on top of that you can get Carberry on the ball, but that's the winning of the game. They need to sit the likes of Taufete'e down. On defence they need to get in their faces. James Ryan needs to be big. I think someone in that back row needs to step up and lead in the defensive line as well, because without Josh it's not quite the same balance.
It's not as dynamic. They're a bunch of number 8s really out there, so could it be Timoney on debut leading the defensive line? Could it be Coombs putting in physical? It could be any one of them. Could it be Doris as well? It'll need to be a combination of both. Personally, I quite like Baird leading the thing, because he has such pace. He's one who could mimic what Josh does.
He needs to work on his tackle technique. That's Baird's problem, is he'll shoot out of line, but he tackles with his arms. At the moment he's still young,
doesn't put the shot in.
And for a man with such broad shoulders, he needs to be putting the shoulder in, bending his back. But no question about his speed, shutting things down, and they will use him to cut down the outside. I'm sure. And that'll be vital. Just winning the forward battle, if they can do that against this US
give
team.
No platform to young Carty and get no ball to Teo and the like out wide, and just suffocate them, and then by the end have a beleaguered and bloodied Cam Dolan. That's the look for Ireland. An Ireland team that have dominated them will have all of those telltale
signs. But they need not to get dragged in the muck, and you're right to point out that the offense has to be a point of emphasis, because as we know well with Ireland, there's a scenario where they dominate and get on top of the team up front and just don't make it count on the scoreboard, and it's a dogged game. They need not to have that happen. They can't get dragged down into the muck, because then it'll just be negative vibes. And
even if regardless of results, it'll be negative vibes, because people will be frustrated watching them if they're struggling to stick passes.
The US are one of those terrible kind of teams at the moment as well, where people who are in the weeds know that this is a coming force, but from the outside looking in, this is a tier 2 team to be beaten. This isn't even a team with hype around them like Georgia or the like. This is a team who there's no excuse to not be comfortable.
If anything, they were disappointing at the last World Cup, which was the last time anyone who's casual was watching them. Exactly. So it's like there's no excuse for losing it.
And they are dangerous, and that is a factor. And I think from their perspective, they'll take encouragement from last week. The scoreline did flatter them. I definitely think that's true. But I love their ruthlessness. I want to see them front up physically, as they're prone to doing, and stop the Irish at source, to make it difficult for Ireland, not to allow the likes of James Ryan just to get easy platform to maybe attack the pill in contact, because Ireland can be a little loose in that area. That's true. I love to see them match us up there and make a real game of it. Yeah. And then kick from midfield. Look to target the young Balakoon if you can find him in the backfield. Get Luke Carty confident, putting the ball into the right spaces. I don't see them becoming razzle-dazzle from midfield, especially with De Haas on the pitch. I think they need a bit more in terms of their offence.
Well, they certainly need him to be quicker. Yeah. Even if it's probably going to be scruffy ball, because Ireland do make messes of breakdowns, even with all number 8s on the pitch, it'll be a scrap at the breakdown, but it's on him to clear the ruck for them, and he was slow at that in the first half, especially in Twickenham. He was just too slow. Yeah, and they do need to be quicker, because there's potential now. As good as Baraki was last week from 15, and you're right to cite him, he was very good. He was. It was a shame he had to go off, but then Teo coming in at 15, there's actually a change of systems there, where you have really a 2 distributor system, because Mikey Teo can throw skip passes off the right and the left, and he can throw those little jinks. He can suck in a couple of players and get a pass away. So they really do have 2 distributors now to link up with as well. Guys out wide who have wheels. It's not like the team that went to the World Cup just had no wheels out there. They do have a bit more wheels out there, a bit more pace, and even in the centres as well, they have a little bit more speed than they brought to the World Cup. So they'll be looking to try and match Ireland up front. They'll certainly be taking the game to them. They don't mind being in the trenches. That's kind of where they're most at home. But if it breaks to them, if they loose kicks, which they might be expecting, because Ireland do the big book of loose Irish kicks is one that is a very thick volume, and so if they can get their hands on a ball and kind of punish Ireland with a swift counter-attacking move, then they'll put the cat amongst the pigeons. But it's like the same equation as it often is for tier 2 sides. They need to be the more disciplined side, which means responding to the Irish pressure game, which will come their way with discipline and calm, as opposed to reckless abandon.
Effective, clean tackling, and it is on Dolan and Taufete'e, I think, as their senior forwards, to try and step up to what is a barrage of dynamic Irish carriers. Like Coombs is he's such a potential barnstormer. Ryan Baird likewise, and then you have the sort of Ronan Kelleher's and James Ryans, who are bedded in class players. It's a monumental task, but Ireland are quite slow and they're quite telegraphed. And if they can just get themselves into alignment, get low, wrap their arms, and just they might get on top of them briefly, Ireland, but they're not the best team for pressing home their advantage unless you give them the ins. So they need to just soak up the pressure when they can, maybe attack the pill on one or two occasions and generate that one big steal, which can be massive. It can be a real game changer, and they're going to need a few of them in this game.
They definitely will need a few, because Ireland will keep coming, and they'll go through phase after phase, and they'll send runner after runner, and it will be a wearying task. And I wouldn't be surprised to see that some of those guys, those big leaders in the pack, looking a bit bloodied and bruised by the end, because Ireland are that bludgeoned and that narrow that it's like, it's coming, but it is still a monstrous task. Like, James Ryan's going to hit that short line maybe 20 times in the match, and you're going to have to tackle him every time, and then any time you tackle him, the next guy's Coombs, and it's like, that is a lot. And you see with guys like the Italian lads, in the back row, Negri and Bramstein, Pelledri. You've seen them show their showings against Ireland, where they're good in the first half and game, and then by the end they are falling off tackles, because it's just repeated blunt force, and it wears on them, because these are talisman and they can't be subbed off. And guys like Dolan, it'll be a different time. Like, England were trying to move the pill. They had Marcus Smith at 10, they had Slade, they were moving them about a bit more, and then they got a little rudderless because they had the 6-2 split that got thing. With Ireland, it'll be a slightly different approach, you're sure. It'll be a bit more narrow. They will probably have to make more tackles, unless
Ireland are trying to expand their game, at which point they can catch them. Like, I certainly think Carberry, like, if I don't want to see it from an Ireland point of view, I want to see Carberry go well. But if I was an opposition coach, I'd be going, attack this guy, attack it. He throws picks.
Certainly that pressure 13, isn't it? Campbell at 13. I'd certainly be I've done it a few times on the pitch as well. When you get the guys telegraphing an old skip pass, you can just line up two things outside and give me that. You saw Finn Russell do it to Joey Carberry. You saw many people. He
does telegraph them, and if he's under instruction to throw them and he's not that confident, I would look to get that pressure D on from the midfield for sure, but it all stems from being able to physically match them. None of it's possible if they're being bulldozed.
If they're falling off, you'll know within a couple of minutes.
But they tend not to be. In the first half, they tend not to be, and then if they can marry the gumption that they usually show up front in the tackle areas and the physicality that they can show with that wide play that the MLR has developed, then maybe they could make a game of it. I mean, they were bloody brilliant against England, and that's no mean feat.
I give them far much more of a shake than I do, say, Canada, in drinking them this thing. I think they absolutely have the tools to put it up to Ireland. I suspect they will probably struggle. I think I do expect a try from them, but I think they will probably be wearied by not just this game, the weight of the emotional weight of last week as much as anything else. Plus Hooley, I think one of their guys in camp, a former captain of them, he was citing that it was actually effectively a 3-day prep because of quarantines and all of this stuff for that thing. So it was so impressive that the guys did it and rallied together, big emotional charge in that second half. It's tough to replicate that, especially as a tier 2 side, and I do expect Ireland will be kind of steaming a little bit from that Japan game. It didn't as pretty as it was for the neutral. I know from Ireland's point of view, having watched it as an Ireland fan, huge frustration. The first half was error strewn. We let them in. They were playing the razzle-dazzle rugby. It became a Japan game instead of an Ireland game for a time, and that's annoying. And there'll be a little bit of that grit in the chat this week, and they'll be hoping to hit the ground running and kind of run through this USA team to get themselves feeling good about themselves. That's definitely the Irish plan.
Yeah, I'd certainly take it. That if you. I don't know. I think it's one of these things with the US. They are coming, but I don't know when. Maybe you're right, and this won't be too much for them. I think I saw enough last week where I say they'll probably have 2 tries at least in them, because their efficiency from 5 out is great.
That's true.
And Ireland's defence is pretty shoddy.
That's
and
true.
As good as these boys will be in the carry, they don't even have a 7 on the pitch, and their 7 is their defensive leader as well.
Yeah.
So I think there's tries out there for the US, but I do think that the physicality of the Irish boys will get them over the line. But I could see another high scoring game. I could see this being, another kind of loose Summertorian 40-20 kind of game.
Potentially, yeah. I'd take that. I think
could even be 30-20.
I'm going to say it's going to be 33-10.
I don't think
I
definitely think the US will score more than 10 against our defense. Definitely.
Okay, I'll take that.
They'll have a maul try and they'll have another try of some kind. Yeah.
Fair enough. Let's see what happens. I do expect Ireland to get the win here. And I'm not just saying that because nothing else is acceptable, because nothing else. But
I think so too. I think Ireland will win this one. This time I agree with you.
Yes. But with that, I suppose we will move on. We're going to make brief mention of this game, which we were going to preview but has been cancelled. Romania were due to host Scotland this week in the Stadium Arc de Triomphe. The national,
which they christened last week in fabulous fashion against the Argies.
Yes, they did, and yes, again, their government need to leave them alone. That's the rugby stadium. No need for football in there. It was meant to be played. Obviously, Scotland doing great work in terms of just spreading the love, going to Central Europe, going to Romania, places like that, Georgia, and giving good test matches, but they were forced to call off a second match in a row following more positive COVID-19 tests in their camp. This time it was obviously a Romania game. They previously cancelled a match against England A that was a warm-up game, but after they had 3 positive tests in camp. And Scottish Rugby tweeted the following statement saying, quote, "At this stage, Scottish Rugby has every intention of fulfilling the following week's fixture against Georgia Rugby in Tbilisi. However, the current situation remains fluid and that match is subject to review and further testing."
It'd be a shame if that game doesn't go ahead, but obviously there's COVID in both camps separately, so it's hard to imagine it going ahead at the same time. But maybe if Georgia, if the case number remains at 4, the rest of them can get out of South Africa, go home and bubble there. And maybe Scotland might be getting over their bout of COVID now at this stage. Hopefully it's been there for a while.
Certainly, it's not been a great summer from the Scots because
there hasn't been a summer.
Haven't had any games.
It's a shame. It's a shame. But hopefully this Georgia game goes ahead, and I don't know whether they can maybe push it back a few days or whether the players are at their wits' end and want to take their holidays. I don't know. But it'd be nice to see that game go ahead.
It's also something of a shame for Romania, who showed fantastic form against Argentina, and this was to be their last test of the summer.
Yeah,
they're not playing anymore after that great showing against Argentina. That's a bit of a shame. We won't see the Oaks in action until later this year.
No question. We have to move on as well, though, to discuss matters that are going ahead, although there is some that weren't. The Rugby Europe Championship rolls on. There's a match this weekend, but unfortunately the Spain-Russia game we were previewing last weekend was postponed.
Sadly,
there's COVID issues, I believe, in the Russian camp, so it's a shame that the game didn't go ahead, but perhaps a blessing in disguise, or a blessing right out in front for Spain, who didn't even have their players and are just they just need to put as much distance between them and that first bout of performances of the season as possible after one of the most criminal campaigns.
Get their house in order. What's the All Black principle? Sweep the sheds. They need to get ground up kind of stuff going on.
They want their men. They want the likes of Ordas in the team when they take the field. When they have to
play a pivotal game that could see them in or out of the World Cup potentially. All of that.
So no harm, no foul that the game is pushed back. It will have to be played at some point. The Netherlands, though, there is a game going on, and they will have their first home game in Rugby Europe, and the first home game of this
Rugby
qualification
Centre in Amsterdam. It's going to be a new rugby venue for some of these things.
The Centre of Rugby in Amsterdam. I love it. They're hosting Portugal on Saturday 10th again. This is a 2 p.m. kickoff local time. Clashes with the Wales-Argentina game, which is not ideal, folks. Not ideal.
But it is broadcast for free on Rugby Europe TV
and rugbyeurope.eu, I should say. But those games are also available to watch on demand once they're out as well,
finished,
which is good.
Which is a great service. So even if it clashes, you can watch it later on when it's not clashing.
Or you can do what I do and get the old dual screen going.
6 screens going.
The quad box. All of that stuff. I love it.
I get dizzy.
But you could get that going as well. This is a big game, you know. Both sides are going to fancy having a cut at the World Cup qualification. The Dutch are on a free roll basically, but like, why not? They looked. What I will say for them is they against away in Georgia, they looked strong enough to play the Georgians for at least the first half. They looked athletic.
That try they grabbed that silenced the crowd was an absolute humdinger, wasn't it? Coast to coast at speed, lovely offload line hit by a physical looking winger. A winger not dissimilar to your what's your man's name who played for Scotland?
Tim Visser,
like physical, rangy, but also fast and powerful.
Absolutely. No, they it's fun to see actually. They're big and strong and not dissimilar to the Safas, you know, because the Afrikaans folk in Safa are Dutch descended,
genetically,
and they're big and they're strong and they're athletic and definitely they could be ones for the future if they keep looking this good.
If they keep an interest in rugby and keep going. This as well stylistically is a great matchup because Portugal have been the MVPs, as albeit Georgia Grand Slam champions. Again, we are going to mention in this segment, we keep forgetting, congrats to Georgia, they won it before. But Portugal have been the MVPs this year in terms of just hitting the ground running in World Cup qualification mode. This year and next year, as we said, are the qualification process for Europe for the World Cup, and Portugal have just been fantastic. They have played with such a flair, such a tempo, with a backline that is just scintillating, like halfbacks that move the pill, a fullback that's dangerous and links up, wingers that'll take tries all day. And like, it seems like we're teeing up, if the weather holds, which I think it's set to, I think we could be in for an absolute cracker of a game. A
shootout potentially in Amsterdam, which is awesome to see. I mean, but you're right, Portugal, classy players all over. Samuel Marrakesh at scrum half looks just an unreal player, and it's crazy that he isn't playing for Leinster. And then you've got Portela at 10, who's a very fine player. Jose Lima in the centre is a lovely player, and then Marta and Storti on the two wings with Sousa at fullback are class. And as Shane says, they take tries, they run little inside balls, their tracking runs are awesome. They just give the ball as well. They don't pass they don't throw the Marcus Smith perfect passes, they throw little passes, but they pick lines off one another. Their line running is great, and they end up scoring loads of tries because of it. Like no other team in Rugby Europe, they turn line breaks into tries. The caveat though is that obviously as good as they have been and as MVP-ish as you say they have been, they haven't quite made a count on the leaderboard. They are 1 from 3. They beat Spain, that was great. They had the beatings of Romania and threw it away, and then they hustled against Georgia.
That was right. That was it. Oh, such a sad moment in Romania. It was like they had it won and they thought that, but they had the big adrenaline dump at 70 minutes, and then Romania came crawling back at them.
They took a 2-score lead, which they possibly understandably thought would be enough with 15 to go, but all the bench came in. They jumped up and down.
Everyone's like, and then it's like, oh wait,
there's still a game going on. And they ended up losing it terribly and to a late sort of maul try from Romania, which was a sad time for Portugal, but they have nevertheless been totally entertaining.
The games involving them have been the best games. You know, like that's what I mean kind of by MVP.
No, and they've been quality as well. They have truly been excellent, and their win against Spain was statement-esque. Their performance against Georgia was game. And listen, look, Romania, here they are mixing with Argentina, with like they had that Romanian team out in its feet, and Romania were blessed to get out of there with a win. They will look to flex their muscles, but it's the second sort of block now that they're entering into in terms of test windows. They're going to have more games in November, more next spring. This is a marathon, not a sprint, and it is important that they kick on. They haven't got anything yet. In fact, their points tally hasn't quite reflected their play.
Good they are, and if they're a little rusty here, the Netherlands have had game time. They played Belgium and then they played Georgia, whereas Portugal have had a few months off now. So ring rust is a legitimate fear
it's
for them.
They have this game this week and they have Russia next week, and it's a 2-week make or break block. And if they can get 2 wins, they're going to be in prime position to chase that rugby that Europe 2 spot. And listen, they move the ball very well. There's no reason to doubt them, except for the fact that the Dutch will probably be bigger and stronger.
It's up to them to be quicker and more clinical, more accurate.
That's it.
And that is what the equation is. But both sides look well au fait with a high tempo game. That the Dutch seem to like to move the pill as well, which is nice to see. So expect a pretty fun, like a pretty game, literally a pretty game. Because I think it'll be flowy. I think if the weather holds, it'll be just played with in good spirits at a nice tempo. And I am giving the edge to Portugal. I'm putting my faith in them to get it done. But I wouldn't be surprised. I think this Netherlands team does have something for this
knows?
comp.
Maybe they could go on a run.
It could be Portugal they come for. It could be Spain that they mug off. It could be
Russia.
Could yet be Russia for being too slow. You never know. But I think they are a welcome addition. I think they're certainly more valued than Belgium were. No disrespect.
Harsh on the Belgians.
I think so. They looked.
It was a tight game.
It was a tight game. They were lucky to get in. Like Belgium could spring back up, yo-yo back up next year for all I know. But I think this Netherlands team are a welcome addition, and it's not just because they wear orange, but that is part of the reason.
They're awesome. They definitely look good against Georgia, and I'm excited to see. Well, it'll be a telling game, more so than the one against Georgia, first game in the comp. No expectations. No. This is a home game against one of the seemingly seen to be more vulnerable and less traditional sides in the competition. Mm-hmm. Perfect opportunity to stamp your authority, and I think for both sides the stakes couldn't be higher, and the rugby couldn't be funner. So if you have the means at all or the interest, be sure to tune in, because this one probably will be easy on the eye.
I agree.
Listen, we're going to move on. We're going to talk about matters in Africa.
Yes. We don't normally stick around in Africa, but it is sticking with that Rugby World Cup qualification theme, because as we were saying about the Rugby Europe Championship, that in conjunction with next year's championship is the World Cup qualification process. Correct. And likewise for the Rugby Africa Cup, they have this year and next year all contributing to who gets that qualification spot out of Africa. And it's been interesting. It's been very interesting so far. Some games have been going on.
It's been a couple of stunning upsets.
Yeah.
Namibia took an L at home against Cote d'Ivoire.
Yeah.
They took an 11-point L, 13-24.
But Stevens looked good for
Nola. Yeah, their scrummy, who was their MVP at the World Cup, is off playing in New Orleans in the MLR. Yeah. And meanwhile, their World Cup qualification was hanging by a thread.
Yeah.
Now they came back and beat Madagascar 52-10, which is definitely good news for them.
But it sets up a pretty seminal game. In terms of them against. Is it? Ivory Coast? No, it'll be next year actually. I think because they're Pool A. Mostly done. Ivory Coast have to play Madagascar. Namibia will be hoping that Madagascar can do them a favour, but I don't know if they will. And they're in trouble now. They're in the doldrums, because it is a 2-year process. It's not just this year.
Yeah.
But obviously a loss is not something they were expecting. That's Pool A is Ivory Coast, Madagascar, and Namibia. Pool B, Kenya, Senegal, Zambia. Pool C, Algeria, Ghana, Uganda, and Pool D, Burkina Faso, Tunisia, and Zimbabwe.
Yeah, now, but crucially, the top 2 sides from each pool move on into next year's tournament, which kicks off with just a quarter-final. So this pool stage just eliminates the last team in it. So the 52-10 win over Madagascar is an insurance for Namibia and will probably be enough. Mm-hmm. But it's a scare and a half that they're after being dominating Rugby Africa for so long, and a pretty horrendous start to the tenure of Alistair Coetzee. The gold dust,
the Midas touch of that man. It's unbelievable.
What does
bad.
He do? I don't know.
He comes in and makes porous teams. He makes good teams somehow leaky all of a sudden. That was quite a shock to read. We've only started covering this just because, again, it's the Rugby World Cup intrigue. But no sooner had I looked at it that Namibia lost. So it's what? In other news, Kenya lost a narrow one to Senegal, 20 points to 19. That was at home as well. That was the same week that Namibia lost, the same day.
On paper it is a loss, but it's an understandable one when you consider that all of their time and investment goes into the sevens, and there's the Olympics.
That's true. And Senegal also beat Zambia 20 points to 5. So Senegal have already booked their place into next year. Zambia and Kenya will have a
duke it out
in a crucial game. I think that will be on Sunday the 11th. Actually, that's happening, and that's the same day that Cote d'Ivoire face Madagascar as well. So interesting stuff as well. I think it all culminates. There are a few games on and off, some midweek as well. The 18th of July is the last of this year's window, I think, and then it rolls on into next year.
We've yet to see Uganda take the field, and Uganda are also a decent rated team.
Yes.
I believe they do a war dance pre-game well, which is kind of cool.
All for. It's not a haka because
it's African tribal war dance.
Completely different thing, except they do it at the same time as the haka. I'm all for it. I would actually love if Uganda got to the World Cup.
Yeah, just to see that
be done at the World Cup, to be honest.
Wouldn't it be cool?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the Rugby Africa Cup, and onwards it rumbles. And despite the shock, Namibia are safe for now.
Yeah, Madagascar, and Madagascar, it is their national sport, but it looks like they're going to be
bowing
out. It's a shame. But yeah, the Rugby Africa Cup, we'll keep you abreast of what's going on as developments go on, just because it is intriguing to check off those World Cup qualifiers as we go.
Absolutely.
You know? And then in other news pertaining to that, we'll shift to the Southern Hemisphere and South America specifically, where Chile v Colombia was a game that was cancelled, obviously, and we were mentioning that last week. Chile advanced onto the qualifiers, and then we were meant to have Brazil-Chile this weekend, I believe, in Estadio Charrua Montevideo again. That's a big game. It's a big game, and I think then it's all gearing up for July 17th, when Uruguay will host the lowest ranked team from the SAR qualifier. And then July 25th, the weekend after, Uruguay face the highest ranked team from SAR qualifier.
How does that work?
I am not entirely sure how that works, but there are two crucial games that are coming up that are scheduled. And Uruguay were obviously facing Argentina XV and putting 42 on them.
Yeah, I think we're looking at Uruguay and USA, and then a battle for who goes into the repechage, if I was to guess, in terms of your America's qualifiers.
And Brazil v Chile,
I think, Brazil have the big scrum. Brazil got a good meaty win against Paraguay, which might be them back on the horse. But Chile are coming. They played that non-test competition last year, and I think they damn near got a win against Uruguay, didn't they?
Yeah.
So I mean, Chile are definitely a coming force.
They play a high tempo South American kind of style, and they are all good footballers. Again, to a man, they'll drop it on their toe more willingly than 18, but they'll do it well.
You could end up in a scenario where Chile play Canada for a place in the repechage.
Yeah.
And it's like,
I wouldn't be giving Canada any such thing. I think Chile, I've seen more from Chile more recently than Canada, to be honest.
It would certainly be an interesting one. But yeah, Uruguay in pole position. But Brazil v Chile is a very big early game, and I believe will the loser be... Well, according to what you're saying, we'll get some clarification on this for you guys next week. But I think the loser will certainly be in a bad place as far as World Cup qualifications concerned. And both of those teams would have their eye on it. So yeah, a game of consequence this weekend.
Definitely, and a clash of styles as well. Yeah. So an interesting one. Again, South American rugby kind of heating up as well. And we will obviously tick off who gets that win. I'm expecting Uruguay to come out unscathed just based on their recent form and all that we've seen from them.
If you're wondering what the reason is why we cover the European Tier 2 stuff in a little more depth than we do the South American Tier 2 stuff, I think fundamentally the reason is because they broadcast it better.
Yeah.
They make it free to air for everyone around the world, unless someone has exclusive rights, which most don't, on their website, which the South American website just simply does not do. Sometimes they broadcast games, but they demand you download the iPhone or Android app, which you can't get on your laptop, so you need to watch it on your phone or not at all. And even then, sometimes they don't have the games.
It's stupid.
So they need to do better at marketing their games. Argentina are doing a great job, but they don't make it easy, even for people like us who like to dig deep and watch all the games.
We are as nerdy as it comes and all that, and it is a struggle. No, you're right. I remember at one point we were covering a game. It might have been that tournament that we were covering that had, I think, 4 teams in it and stuff, and one of the videos we did on it had more views than the concurrent views that were watching at the time that I was watching one of the games, and I was just like, that's not right. There weren't even that many views on the video. Why are you making it so difficult to watch? And then we have 50 people watching the game. And I'm like, well, what's the point of this?
What's going on?
What
is going on? So that is definitely a bugbear of mine, but hopefully that gets better. And certainly you can, if you dig deep enough, you tend to be able to find the games, and they're always worth watching when you do.
It's true.
There is that factor to it too. But we are going to pivot on from World Cup, change of pace, and move to the under-20s action.
Yes, the action continued in the Cardiff Arms Park in our absence. Obviously, we'd covered the first couple of rounds. We had, I think, we got as far as the end of round 2. The end of round 3, I think, didn't we?
No, we hadn't mentioned Ireland-England, had we? Because that was too depressing. I feel like I would have mentioned that.
I'm pretty sure we did, but we
don't need to run through it.
France beat Wales that week as well, but we lost to England, and England now have it in firm control. In round 4, subsequently, Italy 23, Ireland 30. Italy, a pretty good side, dominated large parts of that opening half. Ireland ultimately managed to edge it in the end with pretty narrow physical stuff. They certainly weren't the prettier team.
They have some good physical players, but they're all dynamic loose forwards. I mean, geez, we do breed a type.
No, I know, and actually the quality of pass from our under 20s this year is very annoying to me. And the fact that we kick on first phase and all that stuff. Meanwhile, France, despite being down to 14 men at around the 18th minute, they were already up by 3-0 and had way too much for Scotland, who looked just hopeless. They did manage a couple of tries with the extra man, but then they duly got loads of their men sent off for silly stuff as well, and it was just a ridiculous game. And then meanwhile, Wales managed 3 points against England, who managed 45.
Yeah, this Welsh under 20 team is just not at the paces.
No, neither is Scotland's. And England are in firm control. I think they have a 5-point buffer going into the final round.
So they've won it already.
They pretty much
just a Grand Slam show against
they're against Italy, and Italy are a competent side. Italy are comfortably a better team than Wales and Scotland this year, and they were prettier than Ireland when we were on. It was
it'll be an interesting game for about 15-20 minutes.
Well, they gave France a right go for the full 80, but England looked way too powerful.
Yeah, they look the best team.
They do look the best,
and they're going to run away with it, I don't doubt.
Ireland faced France as well, and Scotland faced Wales. For some reason, Scotland v Wales is the headline on that final weekend, even though England, Italy, or Ireland, France is a much better game.
That was ambitious from the Scottish scheduler.
Yeah,
I know what game they'll want on prime time.
Definitely not. Although it could be a good scrap because they are the two lowest teams in the comp. That's on Monday, July 12th, and that'll wrap up the under 26 nations. Condensed, short turnarounds. Pretty intensive stuff for the players involved, but fair play to the organisers, and fair play to the Cardiff Arms Park for hosting all of it. It's been beautiful there. Every time I've tuned in, it's been the sunshine in Cardiff, dry track, absolutely fantastic.
A lot to be said for the Cardiff Arms Park. It is a fine little venue. There was also that other competition in South Africa, the Stellenbosch, whatever that is, but it was the
2021 under 20 international series, I think was what it was called.
That's a fine name, a very descriptive name. Very descriptive name for the series. But the Uruguay played Georgia in the third place playoff, and after beating Georgia in their opening game, the Georgia under-20s responded with a win of their own.
They did, 20-8.
Uruguay and Georgia, they met in the groups of the World Cup, and Georgia got the best of them. It's becoming one of those fun rivalries.
They're a good match.
They're two teams on the up who are different, totally different styles, but both on the rise.
Yeah,
and I definitely think.
I'm big fans of both.
I think that could be a rivalry for years to come.
Yeah,
and South Africa under-20s got a muscular 27-9 win over Argentina under-20s to take the trophy.
That's right, yes. So
some positive juju for South Africa rugby.
Good to see their under-20s doing well. But it was a curious test series. It wrapped up on Saturday last, and congratulations to South Africa, and obviously Georgia as well. They'd had a rough time of it up to it. They managed to salvage something from the series. I'm pretty sure all teams managed to take something from that series. It's probably a good thing that they did it, because despite whoever won,
you're not doing anything else.
A few good games and colourful tournament that it was. Uruguay, Georgia, South Africa, Argentina.
It was in South Africa, and they got it all off. Despite the fact that they're under 20 teams without professional environments, they managed to get it all off without a COVID
indeed
stoppage.
Yeah,
it's a funny one, isn't it?
It is, anyway. Only in the professional camps does COVID run riot
and
so mess up the plans.
That is about all we have for you in terms of international rugby. That's that parked. It's been a long old show though. I think you're fine. I don't think you need any more. We're going to just run through some club footy stuff before we wrap up. We have Major League Rugby going on, and there was a Major League upset at the Major League Rugby as Nola, who I knew were a good team,
I always knew
those Nola boys.
They played an absolute humdinger of a game out in LA.
Beat the Guiltinis
the first
in
home
the Coliseum
loss for LA.
What about that?
They were good value for it. It was a grandstand finish. The Guiltinis breaking what you call the France 07 rule.
Our subscribers will be familiar.
If you're up by 1 point and there's 3 or 4 or 5 minutes left, and you have a penalty just inside their 22, and you decide, instead of correctly kicking the corner and backing your ability to hold the ball, if nothing else, for the remaining 3 minutes and do nothing and win it, or score the game-winning try, instead you kick the 3 to make it a 4-point game.
And give up the opportunity.
Give up the chance and have to defend for the rest of the game, which is exactly what they did, and they didn't hold them out. They found the try that won the game, and it was excellent to see.
Har. And actually, meanwhile as well, Rugby United New York slipped up at home against the Free Jacks, lost that game 22-6, rather surprisingly and tamely.
Slipped up is a generous term for it.
Well, it was the fact that they were in such pole position to make second place, and now they're dead even with NOLA with 2 rounds to go in that Western Conference or in that Eastern Conference. New York and New Orleans, and the two of them play each other on the last round of the regular season. And what is an effective quarterfinal? But this has been an awesome season of Major League Rugby. There were some great games. Even Old Glory against Toronto was a fun game. 34-28 in favour of the Canadians in that one. There's just a lot of good fun games going on every week on the Rugby Network, and it's been a fantastic season, and I'm very much looking forward to the season coming to its crescendo here.
Absolutely. And it's very spicy. Like the Guiltinis are still atop the table in the Western Conference with a 55, but the Utah Warriors on 51 are within striking distance, and the Gilgronis behind them on 46 are within striking distance of them. The San Diego Legion less so on 37, probably too late for them. It seems like they're dust, like the Free Jacks and the other comp. But like Nola Gold, Rooney, obviously, as you were saying, 46 each. Rugby Atalanta 51 probably do have their place sewn up.
Yes, and they have been quietly a very efficient team themselves.
They have. Haven't seen as much of them actually.
I've seen a bit. They attack very well. They're another team that attack very well.
This is positive, and it's filtering up into the US side. The Guiltinis, whether they win it or not, and I have my doubts. I think they might be a little bit brittle at the business end of a season, but they have fundamentally changed the league for the better by just coming in in the opening stanza of the league and just blowing every team away with like flowy Aussie style patterns and shapes.
These were teams that hadn't seen screens before. It was a league that hadn't seen any kind of sophisticated offense. It had just the Legion and Seattle bashing into each other. But now, like, the pace and the quality of passing has shocked some life into the league,
and it's shocked the defensive acumen up as well. Like Nola defended that really well towards the thing, and it wouldn't have happened this time last year. It just wouldn't have happened. So it's a marked improvement that you can see, and it's just great to see. Meanwhile, this week we do have some more games on Saturday. So we have Rugby United New York v Houston on Saturday, Old Glory DC v San Diego Saturday as well, Guiltinis Gilgronis, that's a good game on Saturday. Utah Warriors v Rugby Atalanta, also a great game on Saturday. Toronto Arrows v New England Free Jacks on Sunday, potentially a humdinger. That they both play lovely footy. Seattle v Nola, probably a one-sided win for Nola. It should have to be. It's like, don't slip up. Seattle are former champs, are defending champs, I believe, but have been not at the races this year. Nola Nola
need to win that game and then go on to the game against New York and win that too.
They do, and then there's a midweek game as well. Just to Seattle v Houston are playing catch up. They have one game in hand that they're going to get done on Thursday.
Interesting. And then there's also the Currie Cup going on. There's just the one game this weekend. The Sharks have had to cancel their game because they're playing the Lions. And the Bulls are obviously COVIDing. So it's the Cheetahs against the Pumas is actually being played this afternoon as you're watching on Friday at 3 o'clock, so probably already happened as you're watching, and not that interesting anyway.
Pumas have had a pretty good start to this comp.
They have their second in the comp, and the Griquas are third. Western Province are actually top of the table, although they've played 4 games to the Sharks and the Lions, and the Cheetahs just playing 2 games, and the Bulls just playing 3. So hopefully the Stormers put up more of a show on the Lions, but this is just yet another domestic competition in South Africa, and as bludgeoned as those teams seem to have been by it, so am I watching it. I think I'm kind of
a bit weary, punch drunk from all the
same teams playing each other constantly and never stopping. Just competitions rolling into competitions. I mean, this all started with a Currie Cup, and it hasn't stopped since. They've just been constantly renaming it all the way till
Rugby Unlocked Currie Cup. Mickey Uppy, what was the one in between?
What was that called? I can't remember. Something silly.
I can't recall.
It's been all sorts of stuff, but anyway, that rumbles on as well.
It does.
Then we have a bit of news for you. Rugby Europe made a bit of a bombshell announcement, which is pretty exciting. Basically off the model of the Superliga Americana de Rugby in South America, SLAR. Rugby Europe is setting up something called the Rugby Europe Super Cup. They're joining forces with World Rugby to do it, and it's going to be the first ever professional club competition for emerging rugby nations in Europe. It's massive. It's going to be an annual competition. It's going to see a mix of professional club and franchise teams battling it out for the Super Cup title through a good competition format. The first edition is going to take place from this September, and there's 8 teams in it. There's an Eastern Conference and a Western Conference. In the Eastern Conference, there's a professional team from Georgia, which is great. The Black Lion, they're called. I love it.
Yeah.
A professional team from Israel, of all places. They called the Tel Aviv Heat. I have seen a bit about Israeli rugby. It's definitely growing in popularity.
Did they have a team in the Bermuda Tens? They might have done.
They might have done, actually, that's true. But I'd seen a bit. They have like their national team have had a couple of games. I think they had a game against, was it the UAE or something, that was like the first ever sporting game between those two.
And it was a rugby match. That was right.
That was a bit of tidbits. But I think it has some popularity over there. So they have a professional team called the Tel Aviv Heat. Russia Ansai STM, who you might have heard of, they've played in the Challenge Cup before. They're going to be in it. Lokomotiv Penza, who were the runners-up of the Russian domestic comp, they're in it as well. And I think they're going to do it meritocratically. Russia, they might have their competition, and then the winners get into this comp. Yeah, fair. You can rotate that year on year. So they have 2 Russian teams in it, an Israeli team and a Georgian team make up the Eastern Conference.
Cool.
The Western Conference has a team from Belgium, the Brussels Devils. Team from Netherlands, bizarrely called the Delta, which given the times you'd think
probably
change
poor branding.
your name. Go Delta, go! No way, you can't be doing that. So that's
just call themselves the Coronas.
Then there's Lusitanos from Portugal, which is a fun name. And good to see Portugal getting in there. And then there's the Castilla y Leon, Castle and Lion Iberians. So they're the Iberians and the
Iberians.
The
Castilla y Leon. Yeah,
that's Castle and Lion.
It is,
that's the Spanish franchise. We have teams from Portugal, Spain, Belgium, Netherlands, Russia, Israel, Georgia, notably not Romania, which is interesting. Obviously that kind of
stuff.
That
is a shame, because part of the thought of building that new stadium with the undersoil heating that it has was to facilitate the club side there getting into the Challenge Cup.
And
that's the other thing about this, is it doesn't have a direct pathway into the Challenge Cup. It's a separate entity at the moment. That is a shame.
They need to put that in.
I would like for
after
that
a
to
season
be the
of this, the winner needs to get into the Challenge Cup, just for the intriguing reasons. But actually, this year it goes on during the Champions Cup and the Challenge Cup, so it's obviously not going to work. But it's going to be great. It's going to be great for the European teams to have a base camp. It's based on that South American model, and just another entry point into professional rugby for the non-traditional European nations.
Sure, look,
so good to see.
An Israeli rugby franchise. This is fun. That's something that I didn't exist up until recently. So here it is. And one of the curiosities about it is that the structure of the tournament, like they're going to play the regular season right up till December, and then take a break and then do the finals in April. Yeah,
that's bizarre.
That is weird.
Yeah, it's so strange. So they play 6 regular season games spaced out between September and December, and then semi-finals and finals in April. 4-month gap between regular season and finals.
Form out the window.
Form gone.
Pre-season semi-finals.
Potentially squads changed irreparably. Like, what if a French team in the Pro 2 gets a look at some of these guys and goes, "Ooh, there's your star player. Let me have him. He's a medical joker. I like him.
Joker.
That's it. The
French with their medical jokers.
There's always room for a medical joker, Shane, and there's always room for one in the squad.
Just when you need Tommy Ramos to go home.
Exactly.
Then it's a medical joker.
Medical joker.
Oh, look, he's there at 10 for
Guess what card I have in my pocket? It's the medical joker. That's it. I'm curious about that aspect of the format, and I definitely think it's if the French teams are paying attention, which they often are, it's definitely rife for that happening. One team ends up being class, and then I'll take you, and then all of a sudden they're not class, and they don't end up winning because of it.
They don't,
because they've lost half their squad from December. Because they haven't been playing a professional rugby match in 4 months.
Even if they haven't lost, they do like that. Even if they haven't lost all their players, they still haven't played a game in 4 months. They could be rusty as all hell and just like cobwebs.
Very strange.
It's a bit of a strange one, but it is obviously teething issues. There were those teething issues with Slough as well. Even if it's a basket, even if there are setbacks, it is COVID year. I think the important thing is to try and get this comp done in the books. Get one champion declared.
Leave the station.
Get it left station. That's exactly it. Just get it underway. Then there's a history. Then you can build from it, and that's where Slough are now. Hopefully 12 months down the line, that's where these guys will be too.
Awesome to see. To see. And obviously in future years, it's their ambition to extend the comp, to add teams from other countries. You want to see it spread all around Europe, and you want to see it be a bigger competition and perhaps a more organised competition in the years to come. But these are very promising seeds. As much as people like to write off rugby as dead and buried and write their articles about how COVID has destroyed the sport, in the meanwhile, the people who work in it,
there's innovative thinking going on.
There's good thinking.
This is a good idea.
Exactly.
I wish it well.
Exactly.
Really good branding. Rugby Europe Super Cup.
Nice name. Nice name. I prefer. Is it as nice as Slough? The Superliga Americana de Rugby. they're both good.
Yeah, no, they're both solid. I'm rooting for it anyway.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
As we enter the goofy hour, we're going to wrap up the show with the news of the week. We have some interesting news that Israel Folau is back again, this time with the Shining Arcs in Japan. So he's going to be playing...
joining Laidlaw and the like out there.
Is that right? Laidlaw he's going to play with. And his coach has given him the backing. He's making his return officially now to Union after 2 years after being sacked by Rugby Australia for making anti-gay posts on social media and then being asked not to and then continuing to do so and then being asked not to and then continuing to do so again, all while becoming a preacher. Yes. He's definitely in the weeds as far as that's concerned and in a crazy place where I don't know what has convinced him.
I don't know how much use he'll
ranting
be.
about
the
gay
other thing,
people.
The other thing they've signed is Rob Penny. Which,
well, listen, you just said I don't know how much use he'll be. I'd say what you want about him.
No,
when he was fired, he was the best fullback in the world.
That's true.
There's just no denying that he was the best fullback in the world. He was a sensational rugby player, and he's lit his own career on fire. So I don't know. He's
going to
back,
carry on with that. He won't stop.
No, this is the thing. This is
like
why Australia had to axe him.
He's an Instagram generation preacher and a convert at that.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. It's a perfect storm of crazy, horrible stuff that he's going to be spewing. Just not good from branding point of view, but good from try scoring and high ball fielding point of view.
Yeah, not good from minority people point of view. It's just. Yeah, gay people get enough shit as it is with rugby throwing stuff at them. So I don't like the appointment for that reason.
No,
because he won't stop.
I also don't fully like the Rob Penny appointment either, because the Shining
poor
Arcs.
Old Rob Penny.
No, sorry, the Shining Arcs. I watched some of them this year. They were rubbish. They were one of the teams that were routinely getting hosed, and they've obviously gone on a splendid splurge. They're getting Rob Penny in to right that ship off his Waratahs show.
Hey, Rob Penny's been very unlucky with the squads he's had to work with.
Okay.
Yeah.
So give him the Shining Arcs fresh off their terrible... They do have Israel Folau.
Maybe he makes something
happen. I
hold nothing against Rob Penny.
No, I don't either. But I don't think it's that prudent an appointment.
It might be, but it just saddened me. And Israel saddens me because he was one of my favourite players to watch, and he's just gone off the deep end. Something fierce.
It's true.
Anyway, then there's another bit of news which is also intriguing in the coaching departments. The Houston Sabercats of the MLR have announced that Heineke Meyer, who you might remember from coaching the Springboks, as their director of rugby, and that is quite a coup for the Houston Sabercats.
That is, he's got credentials. He's got proper credentials.
I really enjoyed his Springbok team. He actively tried to make them a wider attacking team and got some inroads with it. They beat the All Blacks playing a sexy attacking game with a try from their own 22. That was really the highlight of his tenure. It did stall towards the end. Obviously, people just remember that loss against Japan. But I think he's an awesome coach. I think he married the physicality with the expansive play really well with the Springboks, and just kind of derailed in that 2015 World Cup. And yet they still made a semi-final and came closer than any other team to beating that All Black team that was the best ever. They lost that game by 2 points. People forget that All Black team was unbeatable, and Heineke Meyer's Boks got within 2 points of them in the semi-final.
They lost to Japan.
Yeah,
out you go.
That's the way the cookie crumbles. They don't take it. They don't take to that kindly.
Can't lose to Japan.
Yeah, well, you know what? It is aged better than all that because Japan were coming, as we now know.
Yes, intimately. We join you on that horrible perch.
And more teams to come.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good sign for the MLR though. Just getting someone of that caliber. It's a sign of where it is. There's high quality stuff in the MLR. And then speaking of the other one that we learned in the meantime, just to throw in, is the LA Guillotini's head coach Darren Coleman has been offered the job of the Waratahs.
Yeah,
flip side there. So just Guillotini's obviously innovative, changed the game in the US, been brilliant. And now
it might be done.
Noticed.
It might be fizzle spark done.
Maybe, but there is a bigger coaching ticket behind that. I don't think the entity is going to be disappeared, but it's just a good sign that the MLR is getting high caliber coaches like Heineke Meyer in there, or getting Heineke Meyer in there, and it's becoming like a good talent pool. They're young. He's a young coach, Darren thing, and it's like a good little kind of place to cut your teeth and then get a super rugby gig. This is good.
Things are going to be in flux in the MLR for a while. Teams will make big signings, get good, then some players will leave, some coaches will come and go. The thing that will remain a constant over there is the American players, the US based players, and those are the guys that ultimately you're going to profit from investing in. If you have a baseline of class American players in your club, and then you add the international additions on top of that and the coaching additions on top of that, then you're positioning yourselves as a strong franchise for the seasons to come,
Yeah.
whereas some of these other teams that just buy in a load of players might be good for a time and then come down and up, and everything will be in flux as the seasons go. But yeah, no, exciting times for the MLR, and exciting times if you're a diehard Houston Sabercats fan, because you got a good one in Heineken Meyer.
That's true.
Then finally, we're just going to end with some sad and slightly bizarre news. Ottery Black, he's leaving. He's called time in his career in New Zealand. He's heading to Japan following the domestic competition in New Zealand. He obviously didn't make the All Black squad. He just guided the Blues to their first trophy in a million years.
Played well for the Maori as well. Is a lovely passer of a ball, but he was saying on a podcast appearance, he was saying that basically he was looking at his position at the Blues and saying to himself, Beauden Barrett's coming back next year, Harry Plummer is a 10 really, Steve Perifetta likewise, is there a place for me? And then he was asking around and saying, you know, if I'm staying in New Zealand, it's not going to be at the Blues because I'm not going to get the same game time with Beauden Barrett coming back. So I tested the waters in New Zealand and no one wanted me. So he's saying, okay, well, must be a sign for me to go. And he's off to Japan to ply his trade over there. But yeah, bizarre one. New Zealand are just letting Black go. He was one of the better 10s, I thought, in Super Rugby this year. Yeah.
He's not Mo'unga or Barrett standard.
No, I don't, like that's kind of what they hardline. Like they did the same for guys like James Lowe, who we know all about his
Nyani
qualities.
Lamapi.
There are guys like that who just don't fit the All Black mould and don't, like, when you have Mo'unga and Barrett, like, there is no avenue to the All Black side within there, like with
Damien
McKenzie, Geordie Barrett, all of these other guys who are going to fill in. I do think he is a slight cut below them. That being said, I think he's a fine 10, and I think whoever picks
he's better
him up,
though. He doesn't have to be an All Black, but the thing that blows my mind is that none of the Super Rugby franchises showed an interest.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, is he not better than the lad who was in the Hurricanes this year, or is he not better? Like, even Mitch Hunt, I would take Black over Mitch Hunt.
Gatland.
Bryn Gatland, I know he's young and full of potential, but if I was to line up a team next week and had a choice between Bryn Gatland and Ottery Black, I'd pick Ottery Black. So from that point of view, it's definitely weird. Like, he wanted to stay in New Zealand and none of the Super Rugby teams were interested. I just can't imagine why. Anyway,
it's a curious one. One thing I would say is that the Blues pack are mighty and tend to give him a bit of a coast, and the only times he disappears entirely are when he's up against the Crusaders and he doesn't have that platform. Maybe there's something to that, you know.
Maybe there's something to the Crusaders just being an unreal team.
That's true
well,
too. There's definitely something to that. But no, it's an unfortunate way to end his career in New Zealand. I expect he'll do very well in Japan. I expect he'd be a useful asset for a European club as well.
Yeah.
A European club in need of a 10, he's a decent one for sure.
Yeah.
Like, I think he has a fine career ahead of him as a club pro.
As a journeyman, But like, a journeyman is meant with no disrespect.
No, journeyman's a fine thing to be. You can travel the world and play rugby, as Matt Giddo has put recently, going like, sure, look, I'm getting on now, but here I am in LA playing rugby still, you know. It's a great old way to be. Like,
not too many tears shed for Ottery Black. He'll be just fine.
That's my take on that. That's the hope.
Yeah, fair enough. And with that, I think we're out of things to talk about at long last. Unless you want to spend another hour with us on the crazy long podcast that we do so love to do. It has been a busy one, but we have really enjoyed breaking down all the rugby for you. It's great. It's great that there's so much on, and the COVID concerns aside, the Lions tour humbles on. But it's been really enjoyable summer tours, and good to see all these test teams going, and looking forward to the matches this week, and looking forward to being back with you guys next week, as we will be for sure with a podcast probably after the South Africa A game next Wednesday, so probably on Thursday or Friday, hopefully Thursday, we'll be with you guys with another show. And also we might have that preview show that we were talking about, depending on what kind of South Africa A we see, and whether or not this game is truly worth a preview. If you check
the team and you think it's going to be a shellacking, we probably won't.
Because there's not much to say.
But ring the bell anyway. Just so that we notify. Just in case. There will be a show.
The bell is good.
Bell's good, the like's good, the subscribe's good, comments great. We love all of that stuff. Please do drop them down in the comments below. Join us next week for number 99, I think, and then 100 the week after. We'll keep on rolling. I don't know what else to say other than see you later, folks.
Bye-bye.
Ding. You're up.
Yeah. Gotta get this one right.
It's an overthrow. A costly overthrow.
Yeah.
And another
kind of clipped the top.
Got the top, but we're still in frame there. That's disappointing.
Yeah.
Oh boy. We'll get it right. We'll get it right next time.